Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the City of Farmers Branch regular City Council meeting. It is Tuesday, October 13th, 2020. The time is 6:01 p.m. Before we get started, there has been a change to the agenda. We are adding item J3, which is to consider adopting ordinance number 3662, approving an annual update of the service and assessment plan and assessment role for Mercer Crossing Public Improvement pursuant to Chapter 372 of the Texas Local Government Code, and take appropriate action to the consent agenda. So just want to make you all aware of that at this time, and we will make the motion accordingly when it's time to approve the consent agenda. Next up is our invocation and pledge of allegiance, which will be led by Councilmember Norwood.
Please stand. If you would pray with me. Father Almighty, we thank you for the many blessings that we have and for the opportunity to serve the city of Farmers Branch. I ask that you would give us ears to hear you and your will for the city, the courage to take actions that are right, and that you would keep us all safe and give us peace. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Just want to make sure I have them in order. Next up is our ceremonial items, and we're, here is an opportunity to congratulate the achievements of our Parks and Rec department in various aspects. And so, E1 is the presentation of the Texas Recreation and Park Society TRAPS 2020 award to Branch Connection for excellence in senior programming. So the Branch Connection has been awarded the Texas Recreation and Park Society 2020 North Regional Award for Excellence in Senior Programming for their drive-through meal program. Approximately 5,294 meals were served from the start of COVID through the end of the year. This service will continue once a week until the Branch Connection reopens. Many restaurants had limited service during this time. However, the city was able to coordinate with 5 Farmers Branch restaurants who catered each meal and received a total of $24,800 in funds. Breakfast and lunch meals at the Branch Connection normally provides an opportunity for seniors to break bread together, socialize with the other members, and converse with the senior advisory board members. However, the coronavirus pandemic and these communal meals came abruptly to a halt. Staff and community partners were determined to continue to provide a healthy meal and a safe way to pick it up, even if the social interaction was brief and at a distance. They did this by creating a drive-through meal program to offer meals 1 or 2 times a week throughout the facility's closure, as well as delivering to those who could not drive. And, I think this was just a wonderful partnership through, ingenuity and kind of, determination from the individuals at the Branch Connection, our staff, to find a way to reach out to people, especially those that were, kind of looking for a place to connect, because that was usually their home where they found their sense of community, and help those that were kind of probably falling on hard times, get a hot meal and make sure that they could eat that day. And, coming together with our local restaurants to find this opportunity to engage. And, it was great that Councilmember Lynn and several other people would show up to help volunteer and pass out meals. It was just a great way for a community to come together and take care of those probably most in need during this troubling time. And so, I just want to thank the staff for all that you did, for the creativity and, putting forth the effort to find ways to help those. And Jackie, if you want to come up and say a few words. I know you're at the helm now and want to present you with the award that was given by TRAPS. Well, also the whole staff can come too, yeah? Can't do it without Rachel, gonna make you come up here also.
Yes. Yeah, no, coming in and watching, being a part of Farmers Branch and watching how all this went into play and the teamwork, it was amazing to me. like the mayor said, it was a huge community win for us to not only provide an opportunity for our community, but the teamwork that we saw that went into it. And hands down, probably the best thing I've ever experienced. I look forward to other things that we're going to do in the future as well.
And so the award reads North Region Texas Recreation and Park Society 2020 North Region Conference Arts and Humanities Programming Award presented to City of Farmers Branch Drive-Through Meal Program.
In front of that. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
So just a special thanks to Jackie, Rachel, Linda, and Sandy for all that they did. But it wasn't just that, you probably could have won some awards for some other things as well in terms of virtual programming and different ways that you were able to connect and possibly use a lot of our other facilities like the library and the rec center to make sure that our seniors did have a place to go with some dedicated time that opened that space up to them where they could feel comfortable getting out and engaging. And so just a wonderful effort during this pandemic. So thank y'all. Next is E2, presentation of the Texas Recreation and Park Society 2020 Award to the Historical Park for Arts and Humanities Programming. The Historical Park was awarded the Texas Recreation and Park Society 2020 North Regional Award for the Arts and Humanities Programming for their Girls Make History Camp. The Farmers Branch Historical Park created a sold-out Girls Make History Camp from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on July 13th through July 17, 2020 during COVID-19. The camp was designed to offer an adventure for females ages 5 to 13 to meet girls from the past who have helped shape America. Campers experience the life of girls from Tejas and the American frontier through the Civil War and World War II eras. With a variety of history lessons, fun crafts, activities, and games, campers explore the impact women have made throughout American history. Participants left their mark on history by placing patchwork squares for the inception of the camp's quilt top. And so, another amazing effort from our Parks and Rec team, just finding ways to engage with our community and still allow people an opportunity to come out during a very, very difficult time. And I think, not only this camp, but the other programming we did with Summer Funshine, we did with schools having trouble in getting kids back and providing parents an opportunity to let their kids kind of live their life, to do so in such a safe way, and the fact that I never heard of a case coming up during that time, just the protocols that were put in place, the care and dedication from our staff to achieve those levels and still provide this level of programming is absolutely phenomenal. And, I know our community thanks you for giving them these outlets and opportunities because, when things look bleak, where are we going to find opportunities to shine? And you guys always rise to the occasion. So just want to thank you for that. And I don't know, this is the Historical Park Board, or not board, but, employees and staff kind of want to come forward, everyone involved. If I made Rachel come up, you all got to come up. Either of y'all want to say something? Bonnie?
Well, thank you so much, everyone. The Girls Make History Camp was a huge success, and we couldn't have done it without Tony and Kim and Hillary and all the support with everyone. It was a fantastic week, and the girls had so much fun, and the feedback we got is have many more and do it again next year. So thanks so much.
So it's the North Region Texas Recreation and Park Society 2020 North Region Conference Arts and Humanities Programming Award presented to City of Farmers Branch Girls Make History Camp. Congratulations.
I forgot to say, out in the lobby, we have vignettes of every day and a little bit of what we did each day. So on your way out, if you take a look, you can kind of get an idea of what the girls experienced each day. Yeah, and the quilt is the final product that's on the wall. Thanks so much. Yeah.
So next up is our report on study session items, which will be led by Councilmember Norwood.
Thank you, Mayor. So today we had a fairly short study session, and A1 was any questions about regular items, and Councilman Lynn asked about the solar panels that will be installed on the library. As you know, we're installing a new roof on the library, and he wanted to ensure that when the solar panels go on, if there was any leaks, who would have responsibility for that? And if there are leaks from the installation of the solar panels, that will be taken care of by the solar panel contractor and installer. A2, we had a very interesting presentation by the Historical Park and Restoration Board. Ms. Chrisman came up and talked to us about the Kenan Cemetery. As you know, the Kenan Cemetery is like 100 yards that way, and it is historical, and it has graves in there from the 1800s. So the city was donated the cemetery in 2007, and so we have overall responsibility. So without going into a lot of details, I would say that our concern is that we make sure we know where everybody's buried, and that we take actions to protect the cemetery. So we're going to move that at a future meeting underneath the Historic Park board, so that they can have oversight of that, and that will help with them applying for grants and ability to get extra monies in to help us defray the costs of that effort. Eventually, we may be in a position to sell the remaining plots. There's about 300 plots that are remaining, and there's even talk of building a place for a columarium for the ashes. And so stay tuned for that. I would say to anybody that's watching or listening, if you have an interest in that, contact the Historic Park Board, because I'm sure they could use the help in tracking down some of this information. On A3, we had a discussion on parking. So just to give you a little bit of background, the way that businesses, commercial, want to park is changing in the light of our changing society. Advent of Uber and Lyft and other ride-sharing services has made the parking requirements not that businesses don't want to necessarily have to maintain a large number of parking spots. And there's other methods that are like shared parking, off-site parking, and ride sharing that are impacting this. And so we wanted to look at the parking to make sure that our requirements were in line, and that we were able to allow businesses to park their customers in the best possible way, while keeping an eye on sustainability, because all this surface parking leads directly to runoff, which goes into our stormwater system and creates its own issues. And so we had a presentation on that. That item is also up tonight as a part of a public hearing. So if you have questions or you'd like to ask questions or make a statement on that, you can do that at the appropriate time. Then A4 was future agenda items. We had two. So Councilman Blackson wants to discuss recreational vehicle parking in driveways. And so we'll get an opportunity to do that. And I wanted to discuss more on how we handle the TxDOT property, which is 635 between Josie and Webb Chapel. As many residents know, we've had consistent problems with trash and weeds, and we just need to get a better handle on that, especially with the closure of Maybrook Road, which cuts through that property. So with that, Mayor, that concludes my report on study session.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Norwood. Next is the city manager's report on items of community interest. Mr. Cox.
Thank you, Mayor. The 11th annual Bloomin' Bluegrass Festival is upon us, planned for Friday and Saturday, October 16th and 17th at the Farmers Branch Historical Park. With safety in mind, attendance will be limited, temperature checks and masks will be required, and social distancing circles will be drawn in the meadow to provide safe seating areas. Find out more details and an entertainment lineup at bloomingbluegrass.com. The Branch Connections annual craft fair is going forward, also on Saturday, October the 17th. In order to promote social distancing, the event will move outside to the Branch Connections parking lot from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. Admission is free, but temperatures will be checked and masks will be required for entry. Find out more at fbspecialevents.com. The Farmers Branch Police Department is again partnering with the Drug Enforcement Administration for Prescription Drug Take-Back Day on Saturday, October the 24th from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. in the parking lot at the Farmers Branch Justice Center, 3723 Valley View Lane. Residents can drop off expired, unwanted, or unused prescriptions for proper disposal. Find out more about what is accepted and a few exclusions at deatakeback.com. Early voting for the November 3rd election is underway now through October the 30th at Dallas County voting locations. In Farmers Branch, those locations include the Mansky Library and Brookhaven College Building W. Find out more about schedules and locations at dallascountyvotes.org or at the city's website at farmersbranchtx.gov. Later in the month, the Historical Park will celebrate Day of the Dead on Thursday, October the 29th. Limited tickets remain available. Call 972-406-0184. Then, in place of the traditional Halloween in the park, the Historical Park will host the Tour of Frights drive-through experience on Halloween night, Saturday, October the 31st. More information can be found online. Many of you know that our longtime communication director, Tom Bryson, is retiring at the end of the year after 22 years in Farmers Branch and more than 30 years in local government service. Filling those shoes, I'm excited to announce and introduce veteran TV news anchor Jeff Brady as our incoming Director of Communications. There he is in the back. Jeff brings a wealth of communications experience and know-how to the office and will be a tremendous asset to our organization. Welcome, Jeff. And finally, you can sign up for e-news at farmersbranchtx.gov to have current city news and information delivered directly to your email box. And with that, that's the City Manager's report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Next is citizen comments. There's a 3-minute time limit for each citizen to speak with a reasonable limitation on speakers or one topic or item with a maximum of 15 total minutes on that same topic. Anyone wishing to speak shall be courteous and cordial. Our first signed up speaker is Susan Soquette.
Yeah, I think there might be a couple of people that are
Okay,
gonna
well,
come up. Can we come up if we?
you can all
socially
come up,
distance?
but I'm going to need name and address, and then if you're going to be the designated speaker, I can give you more time to speak on behalf, or if everyone has something to share,
Okay.
we can work it out that way.
Okay, that's fine. I'm Susan Sockett, and my address is 3358 Dorado Beach Drive.
I'm Adele Matthews. My address is 14362 Valley High Circle.
I'm Carol Cloud, 13442 Briarbrook Drive. Thank you, Mr. Dye and Councilman. So the reason we came tonight was to talk about an issue of trash bins. So a couple of weeks ago on the ever-popular website called nextdoor.com, someone had posted a comment and a picture of their trash in the middle of the street on Monday where dogs or raccoons or whatever had gotten into their trash bags. And the post was, "Can we have trash bins?" Well, anyway, within a 24-hour period, the post went rather viral with 218 comments. We decided that 3 of us would come, so we didn't want to inundate you guys. But there was at least 205 of those were a vote for, yes, we would like to have trash bins. So we decided to come before you tonight and ask, what can we as citizens do who would like the choice to have trash bins? We feel that the trash is not only kind of an eyesore, but it also is environmentally unfriendly. And I know that there are sections, I believe the Mercer Crossing subdivision is allowed to have trash bins. So we would like to ask, what are our choices?
And I'll
I'll just tell in on that. I was actually the one that started the post. I didn't mean to. I just, was taking a picture of my neighbor's trash while out with my husband and dog in the morning. And then this is our trash when I put it out that morning, another day, and it just falls over. So, I mean, it's both ways, and I understand, you can't really try to get citizens to make sure they do it at 6 a.m. in the morning, or you can't do it the night before. You can't really be that precise. But I mean, I just was here talking and listening to Councilman Norwood talk about the parking situation, and just like parking in a changing community and all the people moving into Farmers Branch, I would like y'all to consider looking at that, revisit that situation again.
I'm good. I'm here for moral support.
And you're welcome to the photos if you
yeah.
want.
Well, I will say, as you probably know, we've addressed this situation many times, but the recommendation I would give for y'all right now is we have a card in the back that is a recommendation to citizens to put something on the back or on the agenda in the future. And if you fill that out with this request and give it to me, we will figure out a way to address this again, probably start in study session and see where it goes from there based on this request.
Okay.
And so that would be the path forward, at least right now.
And that's fine. Is there a contract though, or is there?
Microphone, please. You just speak to the mic.
Is there a current contract with CWD, and when would that be up? When is the best time to?
So we just extended it. Yeah, 5-year extension. So it was something that was just done within this
Okay.
past year.
So within the next 5 years, is there no way that we can?
We would have to go back, explore that options. The problem is because this is citizen comments, we can't engage too much, which is why I guess the recommendation to start that conversation is let's move it forward and then we
Okay.
can look at some of these things, if any options are available or what that looks like, and address that at a future council meeting in terms of study session item and then going forward from there. But would love some more emails and, topics and items that you all might have as well
Okay.
that relate to this topic.
Thank you.
Cool, thank you. So this is for Jay. Okay. I don't have anyone else signed up to speak at citizen comments. So next is the consent agenda, and I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented with the addition of J3 as discussed at the very beginning of the meeting, that this will be a new addition. Do I have a second?
To be clear on the verbiage, Mr. Mayor, it's
Microphone.
we're not adding an additional item. It was on the agenda. It's just being moved from the public hearing. No public hearing is required, so we're moving it to the consent agenda, just so everybody's.
Second? Who's second? You second? Okay. Motion by Mayor Dye, second by Councilmember Rotana. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Passes unanimously. Next is J1. Conduct a public hearing and consider adopting ordinance number 3660, amending Plan Development District number 90, including but not limited to modifying the development standards and associated conceptual site plan for a multifamily development on approximately 16.14 acres, generally bounded by McEwen Drive on the north and Blue Lake Circle on the south, and take appropriate action. Mrs. Sen.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Good evening, Charles. Shruva Sen, Senior Planner. The property, we are very familiar with this project, Midway Urban Village. It's surrounded by Blue Lake Circle and McEwen Road. The aerial map that you see on your screen, the portion that is surrounded with blue boundary, that's phase 1 of the project. And phase 2 is the portion that is surrounded in green, about 4.39 acres, and the phase 1 is about 11.75 acres. So tonight, the application we are discussing is a proposed plan development zoning amendment. The zoning for this property is PD 90, and the amendment is to, there are two parts of this amendment. The first one is to amend the concept plan to accommodate the new layout of phase 2, and then the second part is amendment of development standards of that PD 90 ordinance related to building setbacks and addition of minimum density per acre for multifamily dwelling units. So this is a quick comparison about the concept plan, that why this amendment is required. Initially, when this project was approved by City Council in the year of 2017, or when the zoning was approved in 2016 and then subsequent site plan approval in 2017, the original concept plan that you see on the left proposed the phase 2 as a 4-story multifamily building that would have had 235 units wrapped around a 2-story garage. However, the applicant is now proposing to revise the concept plan for phase 2 portion and make it a 161 multifamily unit with 9 buildings served by attached garages and surface parking. This is based on his experience and his knowledge with the phase 1 development, as well as how the market is reacting to go with a product that is matching more with the phase 1 of the development. And the applicant is present here tonight. He has a presentation as well after this. This is the conceptual site plan that has been submitted with the zoning change application or the PD amendment application. This is, of course, outlining in detail the phase 2 portion, which is the main purpose of the concept plan amendment. The 2 driveways, this one is existing from McEwen Drive, this one south is from Blue Lake Circle. The building numbers, numbered 1 through 10. Building number 1 is the proposed swimming pool and the fitness center. Building number 2 is the proposed apartment building, and I wanted to clarify one other aspect of this project. All these buildings are for rental multifamily buildings, but building numbers 3 to 10, or 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, they're designed to, where if you look at them, they would appear to be townhome buildings. So even though we are referring to them as townhome, just understand that they are still rental units, but they are designed and built like a townhome unit. Only building number 2, the one along this interior spine road, is truly an apartment building. That one is 4-story. The building number 2, rest of the buildings are proposed to be 3-story tall. In terms of parking, PD 90 is one of those PDs that has its own parking ratios and requirements. They do meet those parking requirements as shown on the table. So each townhome appearing building has attached garages to be rented with their each unit. They are a combination of one car garage to 2-car garage with each unit. The apartment building has 18 single-car garages. Besides that, they have about 13 on-street parking along Blue Lake Circle down in the south area. And then along this interior spine road, they have 31 surface or head-in parking. So that's how they're meeting their parking requirement. Most of the parking requirement is being met with the garages that are with the townhome buildings. Besides that, the conceptual landscape plan provided with this PD amendment, they're proposing 22% of the site being landscape for phase 2 only. Buildings number 3, 4, 5, 8 and 10, these 2 buildings, of course, facing McEwen and Blue Lake Circle, they will have small private landscape yard, also have 3.5 feet tall metal yard fence. Blue Lake Circle, of course, the Blue Lake in this area and the surrounding open space will be the common amenity for the whole project. And both phases are, of course, joined with vehicular access as well as pedestrian access. These are the conceptual building elevations. Your packet includes all the conceptual building elevations. I have some of the major ones. For example, this one is building number 8, west elevation facing McEwen Drive. The one on the bottom of the screen is building number 10 facing Blue Lake Circle. As you can see, these are truly designed as townhome buildings.
Sorry. Don't worry about me.
Truly designed as townhome buildings. They have these entry porches, and the portions are raised on the building, kind of giving a depth on this facade, as well as the 2nd-story balconies, and then the windows on the top, on the 3rd floor, gives the variation on the facade, breaks up the building, the massing and heights and all that. This is the building number 2, which is truly the apartment building. It's 4-story tall. Towards this side, this north elevation will be facing that interior spine road. This south elevation will be facing the interior of the development. These 18 single-car garages are on this side, on the ground floor. On this corner on the west side, you can see this is the double-story, or this is where the amenities will be located, the leasing center and the amenities for the apartment building. The other elevations are in the packet. That's included building that are interior to the site, have facade treatments, as well as the buildings that are going to be facing the Blue Lake Circle and building number 5. So the second part of the amendment is the building standards or the development standards amendment. The existing building setbacks, the change that is being proposed or requested by the applicant is for phase 2. It originally used to say that not less than 60% of the length of the street-facing facade will be compliant with the setback requirements as outlined in paragraph A. They are changing that to 50%. And then the one that are being added is the multifamily density. We are proposing that they add this density requirement for phase 1 to be not less than 22 units per acre, and for phase 2 to be not less than 36 units per acre. One thing to note is that the phase 1 is low because it includes the Blue Lake acre in the total acreage. So that density comes out to be a little low. From a comprehensive plan standpoint, this development is part of our East Side Comprehensive Plan. The subject property is located within the community mixed-use district as shown on the future land use map. The district is suitable for multi-story mixed uses, transitioning from high-intensity form and use to low-intense form. So the proposed zoning amendment is in conformance with the conceptual site plan, and the development standards amendment is in conformance with the comprehensive land use plan. The Planning and Zoning Commission considered this request on September 14th and unanimously recommended approval. That's all I have for presentation tonight. If you have any question, I'll be happy to answer. As I mentioned, the applicant does have a presentation, so if you would kindly allow him to make his presentation, then maybe we can answer the questions at the end. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, if the applicant would like to come forward.
Okay. I guess Jason isn't here.
Jason is in here.
Um,
Okay. He's not here. Well, one question I would like to ask
Yes.
is,
Sure.
we just heard a wonderful presentation about parking requirements. And I'm assuming that we're hearing this one before the adoption of the other one because the minimum requirement's 209, but what they're providing is 280 plus, which puts us well over the 25% of the new maximum.
And of course, we talked about this during the study session. On top of it, the problem is this is the PD which has parking requirements. So that supersedes
Perfect.
yes, sir.
So I have a question.
Yes.
You know, just doing the math on the parking spaces, there's 216 two-car garages, so that's 108, and then 22 one-car, that's 130. That leaves 31 units with no parking garage. And we have 31 surface parking spaces in street. The apartments that don't have built-in parking, what's the proximity of those spaces? And do you feel that one, basically one per is adequate there?
So the apartment building has 18 garages, but those are going to be rented separately. So you're correct, there are 49 units in the apartment building. So besides those 18 garage spaces that are within that building, these 31 spaces are right next to, as you can see, right next to that apartment building. So they're almost immediately next to them. Up north, next to that Spine Road, the area I have shown in that blue rectangle. So those 31 spaces are right next to the apartment building in front of it. And then the additional 13 spaces are on street on Blue Lake Circle. Now, arguably, those are a bit far.
So it's basically one space per unit unless you want to walk around the complex.
Yes.
Councilmember Rattano.
I'm going to piggyback off of that because I had the same question regarding the parking for the apartments. And the only reason I also have some reservations with that piece is because living on the west side, that's already a problem because of habit. People want to park closer to where their apartment is, and so I just would hate for there to be any issues in the future, especially illegal parking. Obviously, it may be a one-bedroom apartment, but there may be a couple. They may both have more than one car. So was that something that was brought up during the planning and zoning session in regards to that parking for the single units?
No, it wasn't, and simply because I believe if we are doing so for the 49 units, they're required to provide 61. So if you add the 18 plus the 31, that's about 49, so one space per unit. So they're lacking that quarter per unit. It wasn't discussed at the P&Z meeting because their overall count is still more than what is required. But I believe the applicant will be the best person to give that answer.
Yeah, because I also have other questions related to what prompted the change, how's the leasing going for the other side, and then with the average cost. But the applicant's not here, so I think we need to either contact them, or we may need to, or I would propose that we move this item for a future
We
agenda
can't
item.
table this because I'm honestly surprised. He emailed me the PowerPoint. I talked to him last night.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I think we just probably need to move this item until the applicant's here.
Right, and my apologies, I was trying to look to see if I had Mr. Lee's contact information. By the way, Tina Bergen's planning director. So my recommendation, being that the applicant's not here to address your questions, is that you table it to your next city council meeting and be date specific, so that way we can continue to public the hearing and not have to re-advertise the zoning case in the newspaper.
Braden, I guess the recommendation here, if we were going to continue this to a date certain, which would be October 27th, 2020, do we need to close the public hearing now and then continue it, or?
I forget what Tina prefers, because you can do it either way, but whatever she feels is more appropriate is fine.
Yeah, I mean, either is fine. If you want to go ahead and continue the public hearing, that way, if anyone has any questions, you can. You have the ability to open the public hearing this evening and take any public comments. Should anybody be here that wants to speak regarding this, and close it? I mean, it's up to council's wish.
It's probably easier to close it, and then we would recommend that at the next meeting, you're going to allow comments. It's an action item anyway. But
Okay.
that way you can close the public meeting and move the action,
Okay.
whatever you prefer.
Is everyone comfortable with that? Okay. Then I will go ahead and,
You can also wait and see if he shows up. If we're expecting, like, if he sends the PowerPoint, he may be
I was gonna say, I
just
just
running late.
I just talked to Jason, he is en route.
So we can just.
okay. We
He was at 7.
will address this a little later tonight.
Okay, apologies for that, so.
Okay. So,
Hold it open.
yes. I'm going to hold this open until later this evening, and if somehow Jason doesn't show up, we'll close it and set it to a date certain at that time. But thank you. We're going to move on to J2, which is conduct a public hearing and consider adopting ordinance number 3661, amending the comprehensive zoning ordinance article 4.3, parking and loading related to parking requirements for residential and non-residential uses, and take appropriate action. Mrs. Sen.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a brief background, because we had a detailed discussion at the study session meeting. I do not have the full presentation for the public hearing item or for this item, but I have those information available if you have any question, or if anyone in the audience have any question. Thank you, Councilman Norwood, for that explanation you did on the study session recap. That really helped. So just a background or overview why we are doing the CZO parking amendment, parking provisions amendment. One of the first item was the encourage infill and redevelopment of underutilized properties. By reducing required parking ratios, we are making sure that the existing properties within the city's east side and other areas within the city, if they try to attract different users or different land uses, they can attract those tenants because right now those sites, in most cases, either they have lack of parking or if they try to attract new users, they will be non-compliant from a parking standpoint. So this helps from that aspect. The City Council's 2020 strategic plan, critical business outcome, is one of our guiding source in when we process planning applications or any kind of ordinance amendment. So the three critical business outcomes that we listed here, first one is, of course, encourage redevelopment of city's east side, which is primarily light industrial zoned and has industrial buildings. So this amendment will assist those properties in redeveloping. Implement a solution improving city's creeks and sustainability initiative as key to progress and success. So most of the amendments or the additions that have been proposed with this amendment do encourage better use of pavement, better use of land, and reduce concrete surfaces, encourage permeable paving and more landscaping and intelligent solutions for sustainability initiatives. Parking standards supportive of comprehensive plan goals, and in the next slides I'll go into more detail on that. So the focus has been to reduce the parking ratios and introduce a soft parking maximum, alternate parking solutions for shared parking and off-site parking, and sustainable parking lot design, addition of regulations that were either lacking or not addressed before, such as loading area screening. So the comprehensive plan recommendation encourages shared parking agreements between business owners in West Side Plan. On-street parking, structured parkings are preferred. East Side Plan, of course, talks about green infrastructure and recommends incentivizing low-impact development. So everything we talked about in the proposed amendment does comply or conform with the comprehensive plan recommendations. Required notices were sent out, and the Planning and Zoning Commission considered this request and recommended approval. I do not have anything additional to add at this point. If you have any questions, or if anyone in the audience have any question, I'd be happy to answer. Thank you.
Does any council members have any questions for Ms. Sen? Okay. This is a public hearing. I don't have anyone signed up to speak, but if you would like to speak at this time, you may do so. Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing and take action.
Mayor, move to close the public hearing and approve ordinance 3661.
Okay. I have a motion by Councilmember Rotana. Second by Councilmember Norwood. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Move on to K1. Consider approving resolution number 2020-144, authorizing the city manager to execute a contract for social services with MetroCrest Services, Inc. in the total amount of $205,000 in 4-year 21, $210,124 in 4-year 20 in year 22, and $215,376 in fiscal year 23, and take appropriate action. Mr. Williamson.
Mayor and Council, Ben Williamson, Assistant City Manager. I'm going to talk to you about the contract for service with MetroCrest Services tonight. One thing to look at when you're looking at this discussion, though, is these elements that are being talked about in these contracts will be replicated in the other social service contracts. So it's not just their contract we're talking about. These elements will be put into the other contracts as well to create parity between all the contracts. So the first big change in all the contracts is we went to a proof of performance model to where we asked for reports to show that the service was delivered before we pay. So in the prior contracts, we would pay up front. As soon as October rolled around, we would start getting an invoice. And then in January, we'd get a report that showed proof of performance. And so all the contracts, including the chambers to keep Farmers Branch beautiful, are moving to a model to where starting at the end of the quarter, so January of this new contract cycle, then we would get a report attached with an invoice that shows proof of performance. So there's no longer have to go back after the money. It creates either performance was there or it's not. The next big change was when you look at the reporting structure, each one reported separately through different standards. We standardized the reporting structure for all of the organizations. Every contract's going to have an Exhibit A, an Exhibit B, and an Exhibit C. Exhibit A defines what data points we're looking for. What kind of information do we want to see as a city for this contract? Exhibit B defines the reports that are required both on a quarterly basis and on an annual basis. So no longer is it one organization gives us an annual report in January, one gives us an annual report in March. They're all due at the same time to where council gets the same information in a standard cycle. So it creates a rhythm for managing the contracts. This is the big change. So before it was every year we had these queued up on multiple council meetings for discussion. This new format moves us to a 3-year model. When you look at the 3-year model, it makes it easier because this means when we have new programs that want to be discussed, we can have that robust discussion all at once instead of, okay, we have these groups and we have this new group, and we can have a real pathway discussion and then move it to a 3-year cycle to where, again, when you look at the percentage of the budget this is and the time we'll spend on these contracts, it makes it a more equitable use of our time. Other big change, we built a 2.5% escalator into the social service organization contracts. So this is new. The amounts are shown here in front of you so you can see what that looks like as the escalation. So this would be for the social services, not for the chambers, not for Keep Farmers Branch Beautiful. If you take into account the de-escalation in the contract that was proposed by the FB Chamber from $30,000 to $20,000 and eventually $15,000, we never go above the nonprofit contract service account of $305,000 for the next 3 years. So that creates an equity in that balance in those accounts as well. So we don't have to adjust the account, it stays the same. Finally, here's an example of the different assistance metrics that Metricus Services would be reporting on. We can always refine these, work with Metricus Services to look at these metrics and make sure we're reporting the correct metrics for the city to consider, but it breaks it into 2 elements. So you have the elements as they would be for Farmers Branch, but all these organizations also serve other communities and work with other communities. This way you can see the service level to Farmers Branch, service level overall, and we can create a percentage so you can see what is that percentage service level to Farmers Branch. Other than that, we kept it short because we have talked extensively in the past about these organizations. Any questions, comments from council or discussion?
Councilmember Rotano, do you have any questions for Ben at this time, or yes?
No questions. Really just want to applaud the efforts that you put on this. I know we've talked about this in the past, just to create more accountability on both sides of the spectrum. And so I really appreciate your time in doing this. And just for point of clarification, the different contractual features that are mentioned will be the same across the board. However, the elements for reporting would be specific to the entity that we work with, correct?
That is absolutely correct. So that they would all have the standardized reporting structures. And so when you want to see their information, they're all going to have that Exhibit A that shows what data points we specifically are asking for. They can always provide additional, but that way it's a minimum baseline and it's consistent. You don't get a 30-page report from one organization and a half a page from another. It is a standardized reporting structure for all the organizations with standardized due dates. So if you ask for something in February, if it wasn't in by January 31st and they didn't deliver, and that means the contractual payment is not delivered either. So they have to show that proof of performance. And we talked to all the nonprofits prior to this, letting them know this was coming, especially the social service organizations, because they sometimes have tighter margins on their budgets. And most of them, when we talked about it, they're all receptive to the idea and said, hey, we support this direction moving forward.
Sure, because most of them have to report that type of information anyways. So, no, that's great. Well, thank you so much. No questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Norwood?
Thank you, Mayor. Ben, I have just a few questions. So this is a pay per performance kind of metric. Did any of the organizations you talked to have any issue with cash flow?
No, the only organization that gave us a little bit of feedback was just appreciation for the heads up, which was Metricus Services, because they do have the most substantial contract. And upon hearing his feedback, we did reach out to all the other organizations, and they all were appreciative for being reached out, loved the partnership with the city, but none of them said this wouldn't work. We had a great conversation. We didn't just reach out and say, hey, here's your email. We talked to them in person about the contract. If they had any questions, called them and said, hey, here it is.
Good. Well, thank you for doing that. I noticed that the 205, that does not include there was a small remainder for the Safe and Sound program. Is that
Correct.
Is that done separately, or?
I consider that separate for the purpose of this discussion. So this Metricus Services, because the amount is coming back for discussion, and we're making some substantial changes. What would happen is that they would have a separate contract for that program that would sit at the $25,000. I'd have to check the math, but it was $25,000. Yeah. And those are within Charles's authorization. But they would be reflective of this. So they'd have quarterly deliverables. They would all match as far as rhythm. So even our lowest contract at $5,000 will have the same reporting rhythm, just so that way we're always getting the same reports at the same time.
Okay, that leads into my final question, is that I noticed that we're rightly doing Metricus Services here. We're also looking at the Farmers Branch Chamber, which had a major realignment. Is there a threshold for the other organizations? Because we're not seeing in Keep Farmers Branch Beautiful, we're not seeing the Metricus Chamber of Commerce. So will those come up at a later time, or is there like a threshold where you and the city manager will take care of these ones that are below the threshold, but the council will review the ones that are exceeded. You know what I'm saying?
So the council review on this one is one, the amount is triggering the council review on this one, but it's also just the structure and format. So as Councilmember Ratana mentioned, the structure will be replicated in the other contracts. So you're going to see the Farmers Branch Chamber contract next, but it is the exact same structure as the MetroCrest Chamber. Both contracts are aligned. So with these ones, it's showing that does council approve of the structure and the model we're using, the 3-year model, the 2.5% escalator, the reporting times and structures, and how we built their contracts to be reporting back to us. So instead of getting the money up front, we ask for the money after the reports have been given. So that's the change. The contracts and material, they're still doing the same business. We're just changing the way the contract interacts with these organizations to provide greater transparency to the city, because we're basically saying, well, here's the standard we want to adhere to for our reports, instead of having all these different standards for each organization. It's just a big redo of the contracts to make alignment with the contracts, to make it easier to.
Actually, I understand all that you said. What I'm really trying to get at is what will bubble up to council?
After these two, nothing.
After these two, nothing. And in the future, anything that exceeds the city manager's threshold of 50,000 will come to council, but nothing else.
And for 3 years, these contracts, so this is a 3-year contract on this one.
3 years,
so
okay, so this will make our budget discussions
much
more
simpler,
Okay,
yes.
thank you, Ben.
Councilmember Lynn?
Thank you, Mayor. Tracy, see you out there. Sorry you have to be the one to be the first up on this. I read through this, and I really can't get on board with this for a number of reasons. One, because we're sitting here today obligating the council for the next 3 years, and we're soon to have a completely different council here within the next 6 months. So that, to me, is problematic. Number two is the $305,000 that we have set aside at present for allotment to charitable organizations, that would have to change also under this model. And I don't know that we've decided to do that. If we do that, and I don't think I was elected to give away the taxpayers' money to unrestricted to charities and charitable organizations. You know, $305,000, that's almost 4 police officers in my book. And we need to be, one, responsible to the taxpayers and taking care of the infrastructure, making sure that we're physically responsible with their money. This plan does not require them to come in and justify their ask every year. They're doing it on paper, and it doesn't afford us the opportunity to really drill down in your metrics and question what it is that each charity is doing, and whether or not we feel that it's worthwhile to continue to support that. So I have reservations about that. I would prefer that the organizations come in annually, as we have done it. I'm not interested in streamlining it for their convenience or our own. This is an exercise that I think we need to go through because it's a responsibility that we have to the taxpayers. And the automatic increase, we have looked at other things, other expenses in the city, and members of this council have sat up here and said, this model is not sustainable. Well, I'm going to say this model is not sustainable as it applies right here. I don't know who decided on the 2.5%, and you know, if we're approving for 21, $205,000, that's fine, and then I would say come back in 22 and let's see what's going on, just like we have been in the past. And if it's another 205, it's another 205. I know not only MetroCrest, but other organizations do great work, but they do need to justify themselves. And if we're going to do this, then
that 305, that total amount, is going to have to increase every year. Otherwise, MetroCrest is going to end up gobbling up almost the whole 305 within 8 to 10 years. So I'm not sure if that was thought out enough.
So a couple components on here. In 3.2 of every contract, it's contingent on budget appropriation. Nothing is automatic. Council still has to approve the budget with this in there. When we look at, they do report annually. That's still part of their contractual obligation. They still have to come before council and do an annual report to the council, which provides an opportunity to question on performance, on what's going on in their unique environment. And the third element, for the first 3-year part of this contract, with the de-escalation that has been discussed about the FB chamber, we don't go above 305 for 3 years. So when it comes back for that after 3 years for discussion, that's when that number would have to be changed based on the market.
But we're penalizing one organization in a way just so everybody else can survive. And MetroCrest, well, let's say, the 305, if that is a firm number, then everybody needs to provide their own justification. And to automatically increase, if you did it with this automatic escalator built in, somebody's going to get hurt. And if everybody's doing great, and everybody's doing great work, somebody's still going to get hurt because we're going to have to trim somewhere in order to get to the 305. That's the way I'm reading this. So,
without any other changes, absolutely, that would be correct, yes. Without
Okay.
changes anywhere else, correct. That would mean we would slowly increase.
That's
But
right.
2.5%, it's not a huge amount of increases. You see the 205 to 210 to 215, and the 2.5% was built on just the average, the major economic indexes that are out there. What is the average over the past 10 years? And they fluctuate between 2.2 and 2.7 with some outliers. So 2.5 fit the discussion point for an escalation discussion.
well, I just see this as we're taking a lot of liberty with taxpayers' dollars and pushing a mindset that may not work for everybody in this city. You know, if people want to give money to charities, they can certainly give money out of their own pocket to charities. And I'm not, please don't get me wrong, I am not anti-charity here. I am trying to protect the tax dollars that we're responsible for and maintain an overall dollar figure that we had agreed on. And I don't think cutting everybody else in order to feed A, if you have to cut B, C, and D, that's not really the right way to do it in my book. So that's my thoughts on this.
Okay. Councilmember Baumgartner.
Yes. First, I'd just like to clarify something on math, and that is $300,000 doesn't begin to play for 4 police officers. The cost of putting them in the field is well north of $100,000 a year, probably close to $125,000, I would think. We could check with the police chief on that, but you know, let's be real when we talk about numbers. What we're talking about here, you know, is $15,000 over 2 years. You know, these are crumbs that fall off the table for people in need. And, you know, it's something that, it's some of the best money, I believe, that the city spends. People with, you know, struggles, if they're not getting help, sometimes turn to crime and create more issues for our police officers. So I'm supportive of this. I think this is a good strategy. We spent more of our staff's time talking about this. If you added up all the time we've spent talking about this single issue over the last, you know, 6 months or so, we probably have spent $20,000 worth of staff time just holding up on this. So I'm supportive of it. I think it's a good plan. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Blackson.
I'm not ready.
We'll come back to you in the second round. In terms of infrastructure, I think we just put another $1 million into our infrastructure fund to help maintain that and add more than what was depleted over many years so that we can get back to pre-2008, 2009 levels, so that we hopefully don't have to rely on bonds as much in the future. So we are being prudent in that aspect. In terms of police, anytime the chief is, mostly every time he's asked us for new officers, we've given him the funding for new officers or training or equipment. We're all very supportive of that, and this isn't taking away from that. The 2.5%, it was just 2 years ago that the point of what you brought up, that expenses are getting out of control, that we're growing at 9% a year, and this is only 2.5%, and our revenue's capped at 3.5%, and we're keeping a number flat at 305. These are actually less dollars in the future than what we have allocated today. And it is a $10,000 difference from 205 to 215, but with the allocations that Ben came up with, it is the same amount of money. And, to spend these dollars for services that, in order to hire staff to be able to handle the needs that Metro Crest Services is providing to so many members in our community, would be unsustainable in its own regard. And they're so efficient at what they do. They already understand the program, and they already have the resources and the connections. This makes so much more financial sense doing it this way than trying to find additional dollars within our budget to come up with this. And it's a 3-year contract, and as you said, we can adjust it every year if we want to. It's just more of a placeholder of where are we going to go to hopefully make these conversations a little bit easier, because I do agree we spend hours talking about this one situation of this $300,000 every year during our budget cycle, and hopefully it's a way to speed up those conversations, because things have already been allocated, and all these contracts, they're contracts for service, and if you don't perform, if you don't turn things in on time, you don't get paid. And so I think that's a huge aspect of it as well, and the reason for some of this shift. So I can totally get on board with this and hope that in the future it does streamline a lot of things for our city, especially as we get through budget season and try to work through that. But I'll come back around so that everyone can readdress any points that have been made. Councilmember Ratana.
Sure, thank you. I have a couple of points. But first, Ben, my understanding, and I'm newer to the council, but my understanding is that we've been contracting with Metro Crest for a lot of the work that they do for a number of years, and usually it's been around, give or take 50,000, but around the same amount, correct?
For the last 3 years I've had the contracts, yes,
Yes.
they've all pretty much
Been
stayed the
pretty
same.
comparable, yes. And the reason I bring that up is because it's a service that we need for our community. And to piggyback off of the mayor's point, other cities have their own department. City of Dallas has the Office of Community Care. City of Carrollton contracts out certain programs also to Metro Crest to assist with things like utility and those types of services. And so, again, to the mayor's point, all of these other cities have these types of programs that they do in-house. We are leaving it to the experts, in my opinion, to be able to provide these services to our residents. Services that, coming from the healthcare field, we talk about preventative medicine, we talk about ways to prevent individuals, children, and families from coming through our doors. Same thing when it comes to poverty. We have to be more proactive and provide for some of our families to get back on their feet. And I think that, if we could only choose one contract, for me, this would be it. Because they do so much for our community, and I to your, I know Councilmember Lynn, you have some hesitations with maybe, taking some funding away from other organizations, and I don't think we're doing that. I think that we are just incentivizing them more to kind of show us the work that they're doing and show us more of the impact that they're doing in our community. That's not to say that we're not going to assist these organizations, but also assist them to be a little more self-sustained. But when it comes to Metro Crest, that is a completely different program, because they are providing ongoing services that most cities do in-house, that most cities have staff that will cost well over $200,000 just to staff this type of program in-house for a city. And so I am very much in favor of this, not only on a personal level, but as a council member and as a voice for the individuals in my district that I know use or have used, especially during these hard times, the services that MetroCrest provides. And on top of that, as the liaison for MetroCrest, I first-handedly volunteered in seeing the lines and seeing the need. And so to take that away, I think is something that we should not be doing. But also, I think this system will allow us to allow us more time for other conversations when it comes to budget season, because I do feel like we do spend a rather enormous amount of time on this particular piece when it's just such a small piece of our entire budget moving forward. So again, in closing, I strongly support this approach, and again, thank you, Ben, for putting this together, and hopefully we'll be able to vote in favor this evening. Thank you.
Councilmember Norwood.
I really can't add too much more clarity to this. I think I said everything the first time through. I will just make one point, is that I think we obligate future councils all the time, every time we let a multi-year contract. And take CWD, which was brought up in citizen comments. It's a 5-year contract. We extended it. So it was actually ended up being a 7-year contract, and future councils will have to deal with that, the fact that we did that. And we've had to deal with things that past councils did. And I just think this is a way to streamline things and to give a little more clarity to the organizations that do provide valuable support to the city. Thank you.
Councilmember Lynn.
Well, I knew I was going to face some, I guess, strong objections here on this thing. So, but I would like to just say one thing: $15,000, not crumbs to me. And when you said that it's over $100,000 a year for policemen, well, starting police officer makes $62,000 to $65,000. If you even said that there was $40,000, which is probably pretty generous for training, but they come into the job with training. So that's what I was basing my numbers off of. So please don't try to say that my math was wrong. Maybe you use different math, okay? Let's just agree on that. With all due respect, Councilwoman, we're not the city of Dallas. And every time you sit up here, you compare us to the city of Dallas. We're a city of 48,000 people. And so we are different. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't follow best practices from other cities, but we are not Dallas, and we're not Carrollton. A lot of people compare us to Carrollton, and I don't think our residents want to be like Carrollton. I didn't think that bringing this up was taking away. It was forcing the annual justification, which I didn't see, because this was going to be an automatic escalator. And that is my point of view on this. And granted, that's why there's 5 of us. We're all looking at it, well, some of us are looking at it differently. But again, I just think that we need to be careful about what we give away for all of the charitable organizations, not just MetroCrest.
Councilmember Baumgartner.
Yeah, and again, not to belabor the math, but we also have retirement, insurance, equipment, cars, maintenance of cars, the travel, the gas that they spend traveling around. You know, it costs more than that, and it's a really easy number to find, because all you got to do is go to the total and divide it by the number of employees, right? So that's an easy number to do, and so math, you should work on it. The Crumbs reference was a biblical reference, and perhaps maybe there's no room for a biblical reference here, but it refers to the crumbs falling off the table for people that have nothing to eat.
Councilmember Blackson.
Please leave it to me. You know, I've looked at this, and I have always raised issue by being handcuffed by previous councils. It's like heartburn sometimes. You know, we have to live by things that others did that we could agree with or we could fundamentally disagree with. And I've had to learn to live with some of those decisions of the past. And, here, I guess I read it and I thought that the escalator was for the term of the contract, not annually. And I guess it just, when it popped up, I guess my second and third grade math is not clicking tonight. But it popped up and I see that it's every year. And I had some heartburn on that. I thought it was for the life of the contract. I thought, okay, for the life of the contract, we do spend an inordinate amount of time dealing with nonprofits. And that's not to say good or bad, but it takes up a lot of time. If it takes up a lot of our time, then it takes up even more of your time. And your time is our citizens' money. And so, I don't know if we're going to get off high center or make any changes to this, but I do have heartburn being handcuffed. And I was under the impression, maybe because I didn't read it right, or maybe because my math, that the escalation was over the life of the contract. But then again, we've got enough consensus to move forward. But those are my thoughts.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone else have any additional comments?
Mayor, I just want to make a quick comment, if I may. We have a large number of contracts in the city with annual escalator clauses, large and for a lot more dollar amount than what we're talking about. So just want to make sure everyone is aware that having escalator clauses is not an uncommon practice. I do want to mention that the Texas Constitution does prohibit, other than issuing debt, current council from encumbering a future council. And so the way that that's rectified is all of our contracts have annual appropriation clauses, so that if a future council says, hey, we're not going to appropriate all the money that past council has put in this contract, then that is an out. That is a remedy for that contract, so that the current council can have a say-so on the amount paid during that current council session. So just makes everyone aware of that.
Mine was 100% about policy, not about us, encumbered with money. Mine's about there's policy decisions that were previously made that, and for instance, one of them is the police and fire 5% over median. That's something that was decided previously, and we've had to learn to live with it and learn to live with inside. I'm not saying but that's just one instance that popped up that things have, and so I'm sure we've made decisions in the last couple of years that are going to bind, councils in the past, but it wasn't necessarily about money, but more of just policy.
I did have just one more comment, and just to comment on something Councilmember Lynn said. Councilmember Lynn, when I compare to the city of Dallas, I compare because that's where I used to work there. And a lot of us compare and use our experience up here to make the decisions that we have to make as a council member. And so I will probably continue to do that because that's the experience that I had working as a staffer and working on these projects. And so it's not because I'm trying to compare Farmers Branch to any city, because I know we are unique, which is why I decided to move back and to serve in this capacity. So I don't want you to think that it's because I want us to be like the city of Dallas or like city of Carrollton. I'm just giving examples as to what these types of programs, how they're run in other cities. And like I said, we use the experiences that we have in development, in the military, what have you, to make the best decisions that we can make as a council member and try to do the research and see what other cities are doing, good or bad. And so I just wanted to address that particular comment, Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Does anyone else have any additional comments as it relates to this item? Well, seeing none, this item is marked for action. Anyone like to make a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve. Mayor, I move that we approve agenda item K1R2020-144, approving that resolution, sorry.
Okay. I have a motion by Councilmember Rotana to approve resolution number 2020-144 as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Baumgartner. Any more discussion? Councilmember Rotana, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilmember Norwood?
Yes.
Councilmember Lynn? Councilmember Baumgartner?
Yes.
Councilmember Blackson?
Yes.
Passes 4-1. Thank you. Before I jump to K2, Mr. Leeds is now here. So if we could, I would like to get back to that real quick so we can close that public hearing and move on from there. So we are going to jump back to J1, which is ordinance number 3660, conduct a public hearing and consider adopting ordinance number 3660, amending Plan Development District number 90, including but not limited to modifying the development standards and associated conceptual site plan for a multifamily development on approximately 16.14 acres, generally bounded by McEwen Drive on the north and Blue Lake Circle on the south, and take appropriate action. And if you were ready for your presentation, we would love to hear it. Just name and address, please.
Okay. Okay to take off?
Yeah, you can.
Jason Leeds, 11700 Preston Road, Dallas, Texas.
Thank you.
Apologize, got the start time wrong. Thanks for your patience with me and allowing me to delay the case. Still have it tonight. I'll bypass my presentation just because I was late. I understand there were some questions. I'm glad to field those initially.
You want to see the?
I'd actually like
Yeah,
to
we'd
see
like
the
to see the presentation if
We'll
you
answer
prefer.
some of the questions you
Yeah.
had.
Okay. I just thought, when you hear there's a second phase of Midway Urban Village, maybe y'all as individuals have been by the property, the phase one property, maybe you haven't. Maybe certain things go through your mind. So about, what more apartments in Farmers Branch might look like. So I thought just I could take 5 minutes and show you some actual photography of Midway Urban Village. We've been leasing the property for right at a year now. It's been going well. We're nearly 60% occupied, 65% leased. So from metrics in the apartment market, those are great metrics, especially having gone through the pandemic and had probably a month and a half down of leasing, if you will, and it's really come back. So I think y'all are familiar with the site plan. Here's an aerial view, just to give you a little 3D, at home. I don't know if you can see this cursor here, but at home is to the south, the Doubletree, Brookhaven obviously to the west, and then 635 and the Sam's across the freeway there. So this is McEwen, and then Midway's literally 150, 200 feet to the east. The concept for phase one is, I think, germane because we kept the same site plan concept for phase two, and that was a block by block development. And so that was a theme that we felt like was strong to keep consistent. Here's a view outside, the top floor of the club overlooking the lake, which is clearly an awesome amenity. It's 2 acres. We've got the 10-acre jogging, walking path around it. People are really drawn to it. I think it's a difference maker for why people want to live here. On the south side of the lake, along Blue Lake Circle, are our 2 dog parks. One is for large dogs, one's for small. Again, residents love that. We've had some people, I think, from the public use it. That's, clearly it was planned as a public space. We embrace that. Part of something that the citizens of Farmers Branch can utilize. This is a typical townhome elevation, just a street front. Our concept was the front door entry, on a lot of the townhomes, and then these private yards. We felt like that they would be well received. They have. It kind of gives you an urban look. Excuse me. The inside, this is a typical kitchen, with 263 units on the phase one, so we have the same color scheme, a painted gray, gray taupe cabinet with backsplash, quartz countertops, stainless appliances. So whether you're in a 1-bedroom flat or a 2 or 3 bedroom townhome, those finishes are all the same. Here's a typical living room and a 2-bedroom. Master bedroom, we did a warehouse style window, kind of floor to ceiling. People seem to like that a lot. Bathroom, we've got a quartz type countertop with individual mirrors and vanities. We also did our individual stand-up shower next to a soaking tub and then an oversized large walk-in closet. Our mixed-use aspect to the Phase 1 development was our office space. Those are ground floor here on the lower level. And we're in discussions with several tenants right now. And so those spaces range from, I think, 780 all the way up to 2,500 and average around 1,500. And we decided to go ahead and fully finish those out, make them move-in ready, separate metered for electric and water. We finished a little kitchenette. It looks familiar. It's the same finishes as our townhomes and apartments. This is our fitness center and the clubhouse. Did a yoga and spin room to try to create different spaces. This is a kind of an informal living room where you can work or get to know others, have free Wi-Fi. Our community mail center, we've got some Farmers Branch history in there and kind of a chalkboard painted theme. We did a co-work space in our leasing office as well where people can stand, or if they get tired, they can use a bar stool. And then our urban take on the club was a rooftop deck. That's something you typically don't see in suburban communities, so we felt like that was a fun opportunity to showcase the lake and have grilling stations. And then this is an inside space adjacent to that where in inclement weather or hot or cold days, we could probably gather 16 or 20 folks in here for a get-together, and warming drawers and ice makers and refrigerators. So thanks for letting me show that.
All right, Councilmember Donna, do you have any questions?
So one of the questions you answered was regarding the leasing for the Phase 1. So I believe it's 60% occupied. Is that correct for the leasing?
We're approaching 60% occupied and 65% leased.
And what are the average costs? What do the costs look like for the townhomes piece? Because that's most of what the new phasing is going to be, is the townhomes.
Mm-hmm. On average, the majority of the townhomes are one bedroom, so on average they lease for around $1,800 a month.
And as far as the phasing, I think you may have mentioned this in regarding what prompted the change is more of continuity purposes, to keep it continuous with what you had in the Phase 1.
I didn't understand the first part of your question.
So I think that the reason for the change from what you originally had to basically the new plan that we're discussing today is for continuity purposes from what you originally had.
Well, there's some similarities and differences, and we had the same, I hired the same design architect as Phase 1 for Phase 2. And so his vision was to keep the block development concept the same, and to keep fenestration of windows the same, to keep the kind of the push-pull of the elevations the same, and to introduce some thoughtful differences that might showcase a little bit more contrast with colors and materials. Still, the base of the buildings are brick. It'll be a monochromatic brick. We didn't want to do a variegated brick just because the first 3 blocks were monochromatic. The roofs are pitched. That's a classic style, and we kind of went back and forth on that concept. And his take, which I thought was interesting, was the roof is kind of, from a pedestrian scale, the roof is kind of the last thing you see if you see it at all. I mean, you certainly see it from aerial shots like this, but from walking around the lake, you're really not going to see, whether that's a flat roof or a pitched roof. And he's big on, I think he wanted to have some aspects that were different but similar, where there was a continuity, and something that looks like it relates but is not exactly the same. So.
Got it. Thank you. And then the last thing was regarding the parking. So, in looking at the number of parking spaces for the apartment portion of the project, which I think is the furthest north.
Yes.
The building to the north.
Building. Okay. Thank you.
have you all discussed potentially increasing, or where do you suppose that most of those residents would park? I know that there's the parking just right adjacent to it, but, you know, living on the west side, you see a lot of individuals actually making their own parking because they don't want to walk, because, you know, they don't want to walk too far from where their apartment actually is, but then also they end up, a lot of them are not just one tenant, but there's a couple living in one apartment. So I just didn't know what other spaces you had allotted for the individuals that are living in that building number 2. Potentially, you know, I don't know if it's maybe parking that could be offset by the northern building. I just wanted to give you time to kind of talk about that piece.
No, I appreciate it. It's a great question. I mean, I'll start with the unit mix in building 2. There's 49 one-bedrooms. I think on average, our average size is maybe 650. We have 70 flats on phase 1 as a method of comparison. We're at 640. By and large, the far majority of those residents are one occupant per one-bedroom flat. There might be a couple or whatever, but that have more than one. We're parked 1-to-1, and here's kind of how I get there. There's 31 spaces on the north side of building 2. My plan is to stripe and reserve those for residents in building 2. And that would be, hey, if you've got a sticker on the car, then no one's going to question, whether you're supposed to park there. We will have to post, towing signs. We have towing signs on the phase 1 property now. People don't like it. People do get upset. I'm not going to tell you they don't, but it is part of just kind of enforcing, I guess, where people can and can't park. So I feel confident that we can actually put legs to that theory. The balance of the 1-to-1 parking would be in garages, and those are tuck under garages on the backside. There's 18, if you will. That's about 36%, I think, 37% of the 49 one-bedrooms. That's right in the realm of the ratio for someone who would be willing to pay extra for covered parking space. And typically in developments, if you provide covered parking, above 50%, it's not a scarcity, and so people usually are less willing to pay if it's included, and if you create something that's a scarcity, then people are kind of more willing to. So that 30 to 40 is kind of a sweet spot on having, and we're not talking about exorbitant pricing. I mean, it would probably average at, $65 to $75 a month for a garage parking space. And those garages are deeper than most, just by the way the building grading worked. To balance it out, to get to the code, which is the 1.25, then we've got 13 parking spaces for visitors on Blue Lake Circle, which, that's approximately, if you walk down this sidewalk here, that's all interconnected to the front visitor entry at this stairwell tower or this stairwell tower. It's about a 300-foot walk on your typical wrap product that's got structured garages. The Farmers Branch has seen a lot of that product built. It's a great product. A 300-foot walking distance, with groceries for a resident from their car to an apartment is pretty much the norm. I mean, that's accepted, in design today. So I think to say for a guest to walk, that distance is realistic. So that was some of our thought process.
Yeah, and I wasn't really too worried about the guests. I was more worried about the residents, just because, like I said, there's been issues with a lot of multifamilies where they make their own parking, they park on the side, and then there's no area for when guests do come in. And so I would hate for you all to be stuck with that. So I'm just kind of providing an observation based on some of the things that we've seen. But I do think it's something to consider of adding additional parking, just because even with, like, let's say half of them don't want to pay the extra $65 a month, right? Then you have, more individuals that wouldn't have a designated parking area for themselves. And so I didn't know if you had any other areas on the other phase, because when I looked at the map, there was a short walk to the phase 1 that you had any particular visitor parking or other parking available for them there.
Yeah, I mean, we're really planning the parking as kind of a self-sufficient standalone for this phase two. I'd love to sit here and say, oh yeah, we can park on phase one. It's just not the case. I mean, currently I'm the general partner of phase one. The way we're financed, we're scheduled to sell that at some point next year, so there'll be a different owner and we'll have a different partnership developing this. I mean, ideally, I'd love it to be one owner for both phases. I think that makes the most sense, but the way the stars align on capital and who's there at the right time to pull the trigger on that, that's beyond me. So, okay, thank you.
Councilor Norwood.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Leeds. You answered most of my questions I had with your presentation. The things that triggered in the city's presentation was the landscape yards. Are those maintained by some HOA or are they individually maintained?
They're maintained by my property management.
So
that's part of my annual expenses.
There's not a thing about
no cost to the resident.
Right.
Yeah, we like, for instance, we have a group, Garden Design. They're actually based in Farmers Branch, great company, worked with them for a long time. So they mow every front yard during growing season once a week.
Okay,
so that's part of my landscape contract.
That answers that. And when we were showed the facade on Building 10,
okay,
it looked to me really out of place with the rest of the development. See, the rest of your development is like this. It's varied. It's got different elevations. You've got the different color schemes, and this looked like it's just kind of like stamped out of a cookie cutter.
Okay.
And I just wondered, what was your thought process on this? Because I really thought in your presentation you were saying how you wanted to continue the look and feel of the urban village, which
right.
I think looks really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And this looks like a big building of uninteresting. But that's it. That's one man's opinion. So
I respect your opinion. A couple thoughts. Because this is the rezoning case, I call it the rezoning case. That's probably not the technical term, but it's a rezoning, and we're working toward, I've made submission for my detailed site plan case. To hit the timing on everything, I was struggling to get 2-dimension color drawings of street front sides. Shurka can tell you she was very patient with me, and it was a little bit delayed. So I think my first reaction is this is a 2D drawing, and it doesn't do it justice. So for detailed site plan, we'll have some perspective renderings. The repetitive white vertical piece that you see, that's, the 30-year warranty hardy material, but that's a 2-foot projection out over a 4-foot projected covered front porch. And so I feel like these front doors have a more grand sense of arrival than the ones I showed you in the real photos, just because I did like a 36 or 38 inch overhang over the front doors, where this is a 4x4 covered porch entry. So it'll be a more grand sense of entry, and the push-pull and the shadow creation with the fenestration of the windows, I think it's a really strong element, and I don't think my 2D elevations do it justice.
Probably just didn't do it.
But I'm open for
so that's
feedback.
fine. And you answered
comment.
my final question, I think, with I was going to be on the materials. And so you've got brick, the brown, it shows brick, and then hardy board above that.
Yes, sir.
And then and the roof's done similar to what the roofs are on the current.
The roofs here are pitched. They're I think are 5 and 12 or 6 and 12. Where the roofs on phase one are, they're not flat. They're a 1 and 12, but to the layperson, they look like a flat roof. So it is a different roof style, and that kind of goes back to the theming that my design architect David Dillard wanted to create, where he's like, hey, we have an opportunity to create something different but related. Maybe this is a brother or sister to phase one. It's not an identical twin, and that was his vision for it, and I thought it made a lot of sense. And I think the goal is, because of the location, and this is something David and I talked about a lot, you know, I mean, because of the site location, in 2 years from now, we blink our eyes, and if phase 2 gets approved and, by y'all here tonight and then under detailed site plan by Plan Commission and Council again. So if we get those approvals and get it built, we're all out walking around the lake. No one's going to know that it was done in phases. I think you'd want to, and that was kind of my big pitch to David was, look, no one really gets into the details of how this stuff does, and over time, the significance is 3 years from now when they're walking around the lake, does it look good like the other side of the lake looks? And I think we've got a lot of positive feedback from phase 1. I don't want to do something that I believe is less than, for phase 2. I do think the pool and the fitness building here in the corner is nicer than phase 1. And I think that's an argument, for a buyer to come in and offer that amenity to phase 1 residents. But that's just my opinion. So it's profiled on the water, and it's a separate individual fitness building, a little bit more private.
Thank you very much.
Sir.
Councilmember Lynn.
Jason, thanks for coming out. Please just answer one question for me. Why the change? Why going from a development that was going to be with structured parking versus what you're trying to do now?
It's a great question. I think it's approximately 74 units less. So I'm proposing 161 here, and we were at 263. It's real simple. From a product standpoint, phase 1 is 75% rental townhomes and 25% flats. And the lion's share of our demand is for the townhome product. So we felt like going and building just 263 flats around a deck would be a miss on the market, just because our block development and townhome product is truly differentiated, and the market has really responded well to that. So my investors and I had a lot of confidence that, a change needed to be made, on the plan. And so, it's really market driven is the bottom line.
Okay. And did I hear correctly that for building 2, those units in 2 have garage underneath, as illustrated there?
Right. On the back side, they have garages underneath.
Okay. So does the tenant in the unit have to have garage?
No.
Okay.
So the way we design these we refer to them as kind of free assigned garages. So when if you were to put the garage door up, or if you look at that building plan on that level, you would see a door at the front of that garage that leads to the conditioned and heated corridor on level 1.
Oh, not the unit?
Not the unit. So it runs into the corridor, so you can walk left or right if you live on level 1, or you can walk, to the right and go down to the elevator and go up to level 3 and still never have to walk back outside.
Okay. All right. I didn't see that, so that makes sense.
And that lends itself to the highest flexibility. So if we tie them to 18 units, then it's kind of a pickle. It's kind of like, man, how can we, from a leasing standpoint. So what we've learned over the years is if you leave them free assigned, then that allows you to kind of flex with just the demand for that.
And they'll be first come, first serve.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the only guest parking will be on Blue Lake, on the circle, on the street, on the south side. So
that's true for the flats.
Okay.
But because we're over parked on the townhomes by a pretty large margin, we've got a good amount of confidence that we've really got the guest parking for the townhomes, taken care of.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Baumgartner.
So with the townhomes, they still have to rent the garage, or it's built in?
Yeah, when you lease a townhome from us, you're leasing that garage.
Okay.
It's all built in the same.
Okay, great. So there are, if I'm hearing this right, there's 18 on the one-bedroom apartments, there's 18 garages,
Right,
and that leaves 31 apartments that would not have an opportunity to have a garage.
that's correct.
And there's 31 spaces.
Out on the north side of building 2.
Yeah.
Yes,
So if one of those 31 spaces, apartments that didn't get a garage or didn't want a garage, has 2 people living in it that have 2 cars, where do they park?
Well, one of them would have to park, on Blue Lake. But the majority of our residents in those small one bedrooms are 1-car residents.
Yeah, majority. But there will be.
There could be some
at
that have 2
31,
cars.
there could be half a dozen.
There could be some that have 2 cars, yes, sir.
My concern is just that we get to a place where that becomes an undesirable solution for residents, and you're forced to lower pricing, and it starts it just seems like it's an inadequate solution. And I know we've faced issues from previous councils, talk about previous councils again, that have put communities in a poor situation for expediency and profit. And I just feel like I feel like it's almost an unacceptable, solution.
I am adhering to the parking requirements of the PD though. So it's not like I'm providing substandard. I'm adhering to what the PD calls for.
Councilmember Blackson.
Well, can you go back to the slide 3, please? I drive by this every day, and we office right across the street from you over there and on Sigma. And I've watched this grow, and it's pretty vibrant. It really is, and what they've done around the lake is pretty extraordinary. This sounds so weird to say, but I feel like your original concept plan, you are overbuilding for what was built in phase 1. What you built in phase 1 is very similar to what you're proposing to do in phase 2. Very, very similar. It meets the kind of putting the big structured garage there. I know that's kind of the direction we were giving everyone for a while, and that's kind of what we all thought was the right. But what you're proposing for us tonight, and it matches what's already there. And I'm going to ask you a stinger of a question, because that's just what I like to do, but what was the value for the original phase 2 compared to the value of your phase 2 now? I would be surprised. They're probably pretty different. It's not because you're cutting units out. I mean, if we were to take the per unit price, it's just because that garage isn't there, that $8 or $10 million garage.
Look, I'm bound by all kinds of contracts and partner agreements. I can't quote numbers, but
I get it.
I can tell you the value of the original phase 2 was easily 30 to 40% greater, maybe 50% greater with that unit count, as far as what an NOI would look like.
Right. No, I understand that. And that's the whole point, is you're delivering in this new revised concept. I kind of enjoy we get hammered for about the amount of apartments that we approve around here and whatnot. And this was the first, actually, I think I saw this first when I was on P&Z. And it was new, and there was nothing going on like that over there, and this was kind of one of those catalyst projects. So it sounds totally weird, but I support the idea that you're making your new proposed phase 2 matches what you've delivered in phase 1 very much. Far better than a big wrapped structure that we had previously. And with that being said, I don't find, any issue with this. We just had a big presentation about less parking, less parking over there, and he's still meeting our PD. And I get it, Mike. I'm not trying to discount. I know you. I trust your numbers. I trust you. But I don't want us to get caught up on that he's delivering something that's less, or it's less, but it fits exactly what he's delivered previously. And we would miss out on the idea if we tried to hold him to the original concept plan, because I'm not sure it would get built. When I say that, I'm not trying to be rude, but that's a lot more money, and I'm not sure the market's going to absorb. The market that you created right there is going to absorb it like they've absorbed the product that you've already got there. And so if we allow you to put more product that you've already got there, you stand a better chance to absorb that into the marketplace. So that's just my kind of food for thought. Let me make sure I didn't have any other questions or statements or comments, but that's it.
Thank you.
Just real quick, how did your net rentable square feet footage change between the two site plans?
It's a good question.
I don't need the exact number, just ballpark, I guess.
Let me go to my calculator on my phone here, if you don't mind. I think I've got gross building here on my calc that was asked for.
I just didn't see it in any of the presentations, so.
I apologize, I don't want to give you incorrect information.
It's not, I guess, going to sway my decision one way or another. I was just curious because I didn't see it on there. So, I mean, if you want to send it to me later.
I can definitely provide that.
Yeah. I was just trying to compare the difference between the two. I know there's I know there's a reduction in the number of units, but I also feel that the 3-story, product might have a little bit more square footage. So I'm just trying to understand.
Right. The townhomes on average are bigger than the flats.
Okay. And that's what I assumed, and that's where I was just wondering. Yeah, I see some of the reductions were here, but are we still delivering the same amount of square footage to get to what you need? And it's more of how does this concept of what you created, what does it look like in the future in terms of contemplating future uses in this community and the different ways that relate. So it's more for just future ideas. But thank you. I didn't know if you had it off the top of your head, but
I apologize. I can definitely get that though.
Yeah, no dramas. Does anyone else have any more comments or questions?
I do, and I will say, I love the concept. I actually drove by there. I think it's great. I love the amenities that you offer. I did just want to warn you against that because I think the difference between the parking for this compared to the original plan was that the original plan, that parking's free parking, whereas in this new plan, the parking is dedicated to the actual townhomes, which I think is a little bit of a difference. And so I just want to warn you that may be an issue moving forward again because it's been an issue in other areas with multifamily. But not to say that I don't like the product. I actually think that this concept is better in the sense that it does provide that continuity. But just something to be mindful of because I can assure you it'll be an issue moving forward. Because I know it's been an issue in other multifamily developments that have been going on in other areas of our city. So just wanted to make that clarification in case there is something that you may want to consider in the future. And if when this actually develops out, you can provide kind of those options for your residents. So anyways, just wanted to make note of that. But thank you so much for your time and being here today.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions for Jason? Seeing none, this is a, do you have?
I just wanted to quickly add 2 items. First of all, on the square footages, we do not have that information. One reason I think is because when this concept plan was originally done, the development wasn't really ironed out for phase 2. So I have gone back, looked at all the previous work. We don't have that kind of detail. And of course, as Jason mentioned, this is at the zoning stage. So when we get more into the detailed site plan, we'll have that information. But once we receive that from Jason, I'll be happy to pass that on to council. On the parking, just a quick note. I know Josh is shaking his head. He said, "Why can't you stop talking?" On the parking, just a quick note. There is a dedicated DART bus stops on Blue Lake Circle. So going back to our parking amendment, if we are looking for urban style development, I think indirectly it's nudging the projects where people would be using DART and transit services, where maybe 1:1 parking, or where 1-bedroom units requiring 2 parking spaces might not be the norm. But it's a very valid concern, and we'll look into it further into the site plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing. I don't have anyone signed up to speak, but if someone would like to speak at this time, they may do so. Seeing none, and since no one has any other questions, I would make a motion to close the public hearing and adopt ordinance number 3660. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Blackson. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
No.
All right. I know. Okay, I make a motion to close the public hearing. Second by Councilmember Norwood. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passed unanimously. I make a motion to adopt ordinance number 3660. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Blackson. Any more discussion? Do a roll call vote. Councilmember Ratana? Yes. Councilmember Norwood? Yes. Councilmember Lynn? Councilmember Baumgartner?
No.
Councilmember Blackson? Yes. Passes 4-1. Thank you very much. We will now jump back to K2. Consider approving resolution number 2020-142, authorizing the city manager to execute a contract for business development services with the Farmers Branch Chamber of Commerce in a total amount of $30,000 in fiscal year 21, $20,000 in fiscal year 22, and $15,000 in fiscal year 23, and take appropriate action. Mr. Williamson.
Mayor and Council, Ben Williamson, Assistant City Manager. The second contract up for service for discussion tonight is with the Farmers Branch Chamber of Commerce. This contract will have many of the same features we talked about with the Metro Crest services contract. And so those contracts were built in unison, so even if some of their contract language will be word for word, we tried to keep as much harmony between the contracts as possible. So contract features. Again, proof of performance is required before any type of payment will be issued. Even the chamber contracts had it in their previous contracts where they could bill as soon as the fiscal year started and then report back at the end of each quarter. This is changing that to saying billing cannot occur until the end of the quarter after we receive the necessary reporting. This one took a little bit different when we talked about performance metrics, because in the business development agreement section of the contracts, we can build true performance metrics. So we looked at how do we build performance metrics for the chambers of commerce. So I'm going to jump around a little bit on these features. The contract performance metrics for both chamber contracts are identical. The only difference is the scaling. Because the Metro Crest Chamber sits at $10,000 in the proposed contract, and the Farmers Branch Chamber sits at $30,000, there's a 3-to-1 deliverable ratio for the exact same performance measures. Both chambers both have the same performance measures for Farmers Branch. It's scaled based on the dollar amount. The performance metrics do build on each other, but they have a very simple alignment. It's about visiting the businesses. We've talked constantly about the 4,000 businesses that are in Farmers Branch. So visiting those businesses, building relationships, and creating value. And that's kind of, if you look at the chamber and what chambers do, that's what chambers do. They create value for their members. They make people want to be part of their events and their membership group. 3-year structure is also in place for this contract. Because the performance measures we built do create a pathway for success, so even though you're going to see the dollar amount go down, I'm going to show through the math, if the contract's adhered to, the dollar contract flow will actually increase substantially year over year. Big element of this contract, it removes automatic membership and event sponsorships. In all previous chamber contracts for the last 5 years plus, it has had some defined components. One, membership was included, so they couldn't bill us separately for a membership. We were automatically a member. That has been removed. That creates an opportunity to bill us for the appropriate level of membership. So that takes us above the $30,000 and is separate. That's in the council dues account. Aside from that, before, we had to be the title sponsor and approve at least half the events they had going on, or most quarters. That really limited the chamber's ability to be creative and create events. By removing the sponsorship and the automatic event sponsorship component, it now creates a pathway for the FB Chamber to create events that we want to be part of. So they can sell us those tables, sell us those tickets, sell us those sponsorships. And that's what we want to do, is really give the ability to create value for us too. Put us in that same boat, create that same level of value. New for both chambers this year, diversity metrics have been added to the reporting. So that's going to look for women and minority-owned businesses. When they report every quarter, this is not a performance deliverable, but as we talk about being a data-driven organization, performance metrics from the national, international scale, local scale, they're starting to look more and more at diversity metrics. So it's adding this to this contract as well. So we can learn more about the businesses that are participating in the Farmers Branch Chamber. So deliverable number one. This will generate probably the most conversation because this is the biggest piece of it, and it's going to show how revenue can change. We did a lot when we talked about increased membership. The first element there, and this language comes directly from the contract, is talk about growing membership by 20 members per quarter. With 4,000 businesses in Farmers Branch, that's a 0.5% increase, so it's not asking for a huge swing in membership. Achieve 18% membership. We've had previous discussions about what is a healthy membership level. That number's out there. It'll take years to get to 720 or even 20%, but I targeted at 18% is what are we trying to work towards? What's a goal we can look towards? Current membership when last reported was at 175 or 4.375%. So there's a huge opportunity for improving in the membership area. For the contract, you'll notice here there's two different screenshots sitting up there. That comes from both Chamber of Commerce's websites. I went and looked and said, how do they value membership? So I aligned our performance metric to what they had out there for their business memberships at the basic level. So that's both chambers reflected up there. At the top, you have the Farmers Branch Chamber, and below you have Metro Crest Chamber of Commerce. So you can see both of them. They both start at $350. And then I went a little bit step further. We had a healthy discussion about what is a member. And so we define that. And so for reporting membership, it's based on paid membership that is current, as correlated by the aging report at a membership level of at least $300 per year, and is unique membership not shared by a parent organization. So it kind of creates a clear definition of how we see what is a member in each organization. And it's correlated by their membership structures as shown. But here's where the math starts to get interesting and tell a little bit more of the story. If membership's a performance goal, we're trying to get 80 new members in the first year of this contract. At $350 per member, you're seeing a substantial increase in their revenue. And so you take the $30,000 contract, add these different components to it, $28,000 for if they meet the membership goal, then you start adding incidentals in there, events and membership. Pick a number such as $7,000. The contract's true value is $55,000. So if you look at just those elements there, that's $55,000. Year two, even though the contract's proposed to go down to $20,000, the membership keeps increasing, but because the contract decreased, the performance deliverables decreased as well. So instead of 20 per quarter or 80 per year, it drops to 15 per quarter or 60 per year. So $21,000 in membership dues again, $7,000 for incidentals, and that gets us to a new contract at $76,000. We repeat the process in year three, even with the decrease in the city's contract, because we're pushing a pathway forward which is built on membership and creating value. The year three contract value, if the contract is adhered to, is $85,000. And so it's creating a pathway for growth and removing that critical dependency on the city. So that creates a unique pathway moving forward. Business engagement visits. This is one of the elements where we've talked about how can you use the chamber as a force multiplier for the city to help out. And that's getting out there and meeting with the businesses and forming a relationship with the business community. So we talked previously about the membership levels. We're incentivizing in this contract saying, hey, we would like you to do 60 visits per quarter at a minimum, 240 per year for the first year. From there, we go back to that first slide. You start seeing those different elements there. Visit the businesses, build relationships, create value, and that leads to those membership components and event sponsorships. But what are we looking to identify? And again, this comes straight from the contract. So this is the contract being moved over so you can see certain elements of it. Are there any unmet needs from the city and chamber? You know, what do our businesses need? We can't be in constant contact with all 4,000. Let us know what those needs are. Opportunities for greater collaboration, success stories, and any type of market intelligence that's discovered as part of the process. When you get to know a business, you get to know who they are, what their concerns are, what their strengths are, and what their opportunities are. So outside of the visits, we ask that's turned into a report that's turned into the city on a quarterly basis as well. When you combine all these elements, that's the complete process. So same structure as the other contracts, but this is the one both chambers have an exact contract. It's scaled. The MetroCrest Chambers contract is 1/3 the deliverables of the Farmers Branch Chamber. So those contracts move in unison, and they're designed to be that way on purpose. So as you give direction on this contract, if we change anything on how the deliverables are weighed, it would also impact the MetroCrest contract as well to make sure there's parity between the two contracts. And I'll open up to the council.
Mr. Williamson, thank you. Councilmember Rotano, do you have any comments or questions?
If you can come back to me, that would be great.
Councilmember Norwood.
Were both chambers involved in this concept of visit business, build relationships, create value, or was this totally the brainchild of the city?
A lot of it was just looking out to where the themes and trends are going in chambers, because we get it's a unique operating environment, and chambers are morphing as well. So there wasn't exactly a huge conversation to help us define the contract. We built the contract based on what the deliverable metrics out there were. And that's traditionally how we do build the contracts, is we identify the service level we're looking for, and then use that and turn that into a contract for service. So the chambers did not define these measures. They were briefed on them as the contract was maturing, and then once the contract was released to council, it was released to the Farmers Branch Chamber only because it's up for consideration tonight. After tonight, the remaining contracts for service, including the MetroCrest Chamber and all the other social service organizations, will go out for consideration because that will have affirmed kind of the pathway forward.
I understand. Thank you, Ben.
Councilmember Lynn.
Thank you, Ben. This was, I think, a much better presentation than the first because you've given tangible results that need to be met. After all, we're buying a service. And with that purchase comes certain expectations. And so I think that's the difference between this item and the MetroCrest services agreement. Was the chamber consulted when this was laid out?
Not until the contract form had been built. So traditionally, when we build these contracts for service, we build it with our attorneys to guide us through the process, and then we will send it out for feedback. When contracts come to council, as a courtesy, it always goes to you all first, and then it will be sent out. So as the packet went out on Thursdays, this past Thursday, it was then sent to MetroCrest Services and the Farmers Branch Chamber as well. But we'll send it to you all first as the council, and then it will be released to the other organizations.
Okay. And then some similar but scaled down model would be expected of MetroCrest Chamber.
It's an exact 1-to-3 ratio where possible. So anything that can be divided by. Was that?
Speak a little louder.
Oh, sorry. It's an exact 1-to-3 ratio as long as the ratio held. So there's a little bit of movement. At the bottom, there's a component in each contract that allows them to add more members or more visits to kind of make the math work, but it's the outlier. Instead of having a remainder amount, it just makes the numbers work. But they're scaled 3-to-1 as close as possible.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Councilmember Baumgartner.
I'm fine with it.
Councilmember
Program.
Oh. Councilmember Blackson.
I think this makes a lot more sense than kind of, I don't know, maybe what I was expecting, but I think this is maybe the correct pathway, and it, just from sitting here and making sure I understood it right, I was asking Charles, and so if I'm not mistaken, so if they meet their quarterly goals, it's designed to, that would be more income for them based than what they'd be losing from us, or from us decreasing our value.
Correct. It's absolutely a lot easier to define a business services agreement than it is a social services agreement, because you don't want to put how many meals should be served, or because you hope those numbers would be going down. So this is a change in kind of the orientation of the performance metrics when you look at the chambers. It purely is a pathway for them to be successful.
He just turned my mic off, so thank you. That's all. I was just making sure I understood.
Okay. Quick question for me. I understand the 3-to-1 concept for fiscal year 21, but does it become a 2-to-1 concept and a 1-to-1 as we go out of time?
The way we looked at it is we assigned the value to the deliverables in each one. So the reporting elements, the engagement visits, and the memberships all have the same value. And so that value is broken across $10,000 for the MetroCrest Chamber every year. Her performance measures will stay the same every year because her dollar amount's not changing. She's staying at $10,000. For the Farmers Branch Chamber, it's scaling down. So year one on the new members, it was 20 per quarter, 80 per year, 15 per quarter the next year, 60 per year, and it scales down to 10 in the final year per quarter and 40 for the entire year. She'll always have a little bit higher just because she has a higher dollar contract than the MetroCrest Chamber. And so, but the relationship remains. We don't change the value we put on each of these measures. So the measure stays the
That's
same.
kind of what I was getting to, is the ratios are changing based on the contract.
Correct. So the ratios will update, but at the end of the day, the dollar amounts we've assigned to these different performance measurements stay the same.
Okay.
That way y'all can also compare the two chambers' performance, because we had a lot of discussion on performance.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Rotana.
No questions.
I'll let Councilmember Norwood, anything else?
I guess my memory's failing me, but I thought we left, that we had the MetroCrest Chamber at 15,000. Was that reduced in our last time we met?
We left it at 10.
We left it at 10.
We left it at 10, and then the Farmers Branch Chamber was at 30, 20, and then 15 is where it
No,
finally
I understand. Thanks.
Councilmember Lynn.
So with all these business engagements, which are important, what will our own economic development department be doing? Is this they both complement each other, but are we supplementing the city's ED by way of this? And is that going to free up our employees to do something more than what they are doing now?
So I'm not going to speak for Allison on it, but the idea behind the concept was to provide another tool in the toolbox essentially for Allison by defining what the chamber's role would be in relation to the city. So the engagement visits weren't there before. There wasn't a defined metric on how many engagement visits we expect both chambers to do. So if anything, it's going to create better communication with us and our business community. When we talk about that 4,000 number, even with Allison's team and both chambers and staff and elected officials, there's never enough for that type of appetite and consumption and relationships to build out there. There will always be more demand than is out there, but it's really trying to create a clear pathway so when Allison knows every quarter when these reports come in, I can send her a report and she knows to expect it and can help her organize her strategy behind what businesses they're looking at and how they're approaching those 4,000 businesses. So it's more of an alignment and efficiency component, knowing that the need is always going to outweigh the resources we have available both internally and with our partnerships.
Okay, so I would think that Allison would be developing some certain level of expectation to go in conjunction with this, so we're getting the right kind of information back from the chamber that's going to help the city in our efforts of business retention.
So right now we have Allison Cook. So right now we have a person on staff that does business retention solely, and she does several hundred a year. But with 4,000 businesses, we'll never be able to meet even half of the city in a timely manner. So even within a few years, our girl, her name is Amy Mueller, it'd be hard to even cross paths with all the visits that Grace does as well. So there is what I'm saying is there's plenty of businesses to meet with, and we're happy to gain knowledge from the chamber of who they're meeting with and really aggregate some of that data, like are we at risk of losing an employer and things of that nature. So that's where it will come into benefit for sure. Yeah.
Councilmember Baumgartner.
I don't have any questions. I think it's an excellent program.
Cool. Councilmember Blackson. All right.
I have a question. How much would you say we spend on the sponsorships piece? Because that's an element that's taken out of the total cost, correct? In the past, the contract included our membership and it included sponsorships. And so on average, how much do we spend on those sponsorships?
I don't have that information readily available, but typically when we buy a table or two at an event, tables typically between $500 and $750. So if you get two of those, about $1,500 per event. And we have 2 to 3, sometimes 4 a year, but those events are the ones y'all are typically invited to. So we get an invitation, we send it to the council, and if y'all are interested, we reserve a table, and then we go to the department heads and say, is this relevant? Do you want to be part of this conversation? For example, the last one would be the Mayor's Forum. It was hosted here in Farmers Branch. It was a function of the MetroCrest Chamber, but we still were a sponsor for that event as well as a participating city. And so those events, we don't just buy sponsorships for all of them. Usually you all are a polling tool for that. So Amy will get the invitation, send it to you all if there's interest. But they're pretty standard. You'll see a couple from the MetroCrest services as well. So different organizations, and they do those to help raise funds. But most of the programming brings us to a conversation we want to be part of as an organization, part of a greater North Texas area. But
Sure, yeah, and I understand that. I guess my question is, for the Farmers Branch Chamber, all of those are included, correct?
Correct.
You don't pay separately for like their mayor's forum, or like if they were to have a mayor's forum or some of the events that they have, or the membership itself, that's already included. In the past, it's already been included.
it could be included, yes. We could choose to, we get the option of identifying which elements we want to support or not support. But generally, there's about one big event per quarter, and we would be considered the title sponsor for it.
And that would be included in the contract.
Correct. So this is also showing that the contract's not designed to all of a sudden just decrease your funding again without providing a pathway to still supplement that contract within reason. We're not just going to buy 20 different events to prop up and increase the revenues for the chambers. We're going to make sure they're meaningful as well, and you all will see those. But typically, it's not a ton of events between all of our organizations. You probably have one about every other month that comes across the council to be part of, and they tend to sometimes cluster together. So you're going to have different events that tend to come together in the fall. And a lot of them are regional events in nature, so it's with the school district, with the other cities, but.
Sure, no, and I guess I'm speaking specifically to the Farmers Branch Chamber, because I know that, I guess when I heard that it was included and with the MetroCrest Chamber, for that contract, those sponsorships and memberships were never included.
Correct, and so this is aligning the contracts together. So in the Farmers Branch Chamber, I believe it would have at least 3 events, maybe 4. There's usually one every quarter built into it. And in the code environment, we had to be creative, so we were trying to find ways to support those different events.
But now with the 30,000, those aren't included.
Correct.
But most likely we'll pay for those anyways.
Absolutely, yes. So, and that's one of the ones where it's trying to create value for the city and those kind of programs and events. So for the number of models that I built, I had it sitting at around $7,000 for our membership and some of the events we would attend as an estimate based on how we attend other events with other organizations.
Could we potentially add to the first year contract for that to be included, just for that first year, because of the amount being so high? Potentially? Or would that just would that be something that would not be in accordance with what you envisioned for this particular contract?
We could add it, but the way, also part of the reasoning for that element being pulled out separately and highlighted is it softens the blow, because it is going from 40,000 to 30,000 to get them used to stabilizing in that and creating those events, because they still have to create the events for them to be successful. I mean, if y'all would like to move in that direction, it's been in there before and we can add it back in, but that would truly limit the contract to 30,000.
Okay. I think that was just something that just came to mind whenever you were talking about the inclusion of the sponsorships, because that's something that I didn't really realize before. I thought those were all separate, and so definitely something to think about, but for the purposes of this particular contract, I think it should be fine. Thank you.
And that keeps it in line with the MetroCrest Chamber as well, because our membership with that chamber and their events are separate.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. Councilmember Norwood, anything else? Len? Mike's good. All right, this item is marked for action, so.
Mayor, I move we approve Resolution 2020-142.
Do I have a second? Is that you, Councilmember Lund? Your microphone's down. So I have a motion by Councilmember Norwood, second by Councilmember Lynn. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Next is K3. Consider approving resolution number 2020-143, awarding the bid and authorizing a contract with Ear Telecommunications, LLC, for the traffic signal improvement project at Webb Chapel and Valley View Lane, and take appropriate action. Mr. Bentley.
Mayor, Council, Mark Bentley, Director of Public Works. Well, we're coming to the end of our street bond program here in the next couple of years. And one of the final items that we need to take care of is replacement of, as you mentioned, the traffic signals at Valley View and Webb Chapel. So what you have before you is we received 2 bids for that project. EAR Telecommunications, was the low bidder at $303,442.60. So we're recommending award of the contract to EAR Telecommunications.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Bentley? Go ahead.
So it's not just a simple matter of taking down the old pole and putting up a new pole?
No,
Because
sir.
I see there's conduit, there's all sorts of stuff in here that's already in the ground.
Well, everything that's in the ground is deteriorating. It's been there probably since 60s.
All right.
And it's all the wires. We're having a lot of problems with it. The wires are breaking, everything. Everything needs to be replaced in that intersection.
Okay. Just double checking.
Sure.
Hold on. Councilor Norwood.
I do have one, not a question, it's a comment. But Mark, I just wanted to comment on the traffic light signal upgrade that's at Josie in Valley View, and what an improvement that has made to the traffic flow, and the decrease in number of people running the left turn lanes because of the flashing yellow. So I appreciate this program, and I strongly support our upgrade here at Webb Chapel.
Thank you.
Councilmember Blackson.
Okay, that's kind of where I was going with this, is we've talked about this and we've made, I guess, mention of it, but, so this is going to be like one of those smart lights that knows when there's cars there and all that?
Well, there's detection on all of them, but most of our major intersections are kind of on a timing sequence.
Right.
Because, yes, it'd be nice to know when a car's there, but no, this is not what you're going to call a smart signal.
So it's not a smart signal, because I thought when we discussed this in the past that the idea was to have that Valley View thoroughfare to, depending on car load and time of day, that it could adjust itself to make it where there are less cars idling or whatnot and all those types of things. But I get a little bit of flack because I have someone that goes in my family that work very early, and they sit at that light when there's no one else there at 5 in the morning. They're like, there's no sensors, there's no nothing. I'm like, hey, this is coming up, I'm going to ask the question.
Okay,
So
that's fine.
That's what I ask is some of these intersections you see that they will detect and they'll trip, and is there any type of smart node or anything here that knows what's going on? Or
Yeah, in some, if it's a secondary intersection, we do have that, where it trips it when it sees a car. But when you're talking about a major intersection and it's harder to do that, it's more expensive. And we do have cameras that do pick up if a vehicle is there. Sometimes the left turn lane will go, sometimes it will not. But what we're trying to do is keep constant movement on all sides, and we realize there are going to be cars sitting there. Now, what we try to do is we have been doing some flashing, and I've been setting that on a lot of the intersections, but we can't do it on the major intersections.
I've seen that at Golfing Green and Valley or Webb Chapel, and it does work there because it before, I guess, it goes from 10 to 6.
Yeah, that was something that I kind of took a little leap of faith and said, I'm going to try this out and see how it works, and so far it's been working great.
Yeah, it does. It works.
And all these secondary intersections that you really don't have people come in, why stop the people? So we do it from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Right. Yeah. So, but I do hear that it's still red when she gets to Valley View. So
okay.
I'll try to report.
Sorry, I can't help out, but we're
She's
trying to
watching.
do the best we can to keep people moving. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. So
Sure.
Is that in a roadmap? Not maybe with this intersection, but other intersections? Because I thought that's what we kind of talked about is in our sustainability approach to the city is trying to make it to where we're, at the thoroughfare and when, traffic greatly varies throughout the day.
That's probably something we're going to have to visit later on because right now it would be very expensive to go through. And I know we try to put it in one. It's not really going to help you if you just do it in one. Right. So right now we're trying to stay consistent across the board with what we got. Plus, it's hard for our employees to maintain those type of systems. And we're limited on the amount of employees we have, and we got to do the best we can.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Anything else from council? If not, this is marked for action. Yeah, I move to approve resolution number 2020-143 awarding the bid and authorizing a contract with Your Telecommunications LLC for the traffic signal improvement project in the amount of $303,042.60. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Norwood. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you
Passed
very much.
unanimously. Thank you. Next is K4, consider approving resolution number 2020-145, authorizing the city manager to negotiate and enter a contractual agreement for the replacement of the Mansky Library roof, providing an effective date and take appropriate action. Mr. Minchow.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Excuse me. Kevin Minchow, Director of Fleet and Facilities. For this bid, staff retained the services of Iliff and Associates, a roof management consultant, to develop a comprehensive roof scope of work and specifications for the bid package. They also assisted in evaluation of the bid. It included core drills into the roof to determine the current roof composition, number of roof overlays, and environmental testing was done. 11 companies submitted sealed bids. The bids range from $217,000 to $432,000. 2 of the bids were disqualified for not meeting the scope and specification requirements. The bids were evaluated based on best value with a maximum of 100 points for the following areas. Base bid price, unit base price for unanticipated work discovered after the roofing was removed, things we can't foresee, attending the mandatory bid walkthrough, and their references. Staff is recommending awarding the bid to Progressive Roofing, who was determined to be the best value bid for the city and also is the lowest bid. The award would also include accepting the 2 bid alternatives. Alternative 1, to go from base bid spec of 6 mil to 80 mil TPO thickness for the roof. Alternative 2, performance bond to 100% material payment and labor from the standard bond. For the unit-based pricing for anticipated repairs, Iliff and Associates conservatively estimated a maximum of $35,000. So that's at the high end. We're not expecting that necessarily. Iliff and Associates are also being retained to oversee the installation of the roof to ensure the project scope and specifications are met. They will work with staff in regards to the review and authorization of any additional repairs if they're found. The award of this bid, including the $35K for discovered repairs, the maximum is $272,200. And I'm here to answer any questions. I told my roof consultant he didn't have to be here. But
Thanks. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Minchow? Councilman Lynn?
So I asked the question earlier, I'll ask it one more time since we're in regular meeting, and that is, will the addition of solar be covered under this roof warranty, and what happens or who's responsible if during or as a result of the addition of solar being put on the library, leak develops and it's got to get fixed?
during the work session, the Iliff and Associates, Zach Warnick, actually said that it wouldn't void the warranty, but if during the roof installation there's leaks, that would fall on the solar company.
Is that correct, Robert?
It has to be installed correctly.
Sir, hold on one second. You need to
Come on up.
name and address, please.
And thank you for being patient.
No problem. Good evening. My name is Robert Edwards. I reside at 323 Terrace Lane in Cedar Hill, Texas. Before I answer the question that was asked of me, I am one of the bidding contractors on the project that's in question tonight. As spoken earlier, there were 11 bidders. We were actually the lowest bidder. And after the evaluation based on the bid tabulation, we scored the highest. Unfortunately, we were disqualified because the specification per the documentation said we were disqualified because our recommended or our suggested manufacturer was not listed, was not within the spec. And we disagree with that because there were 3 manufacturers within the specifications, one of which is Firestone Building Products. Firestone Building Products and Genflex, which is the manufacturer that I submitted, are sister companies. I have documentation that states that Firestone and Genflex are the exact same product. They can offer the exact same products as a 60 mil, 80 mil, as well as the 20-year warranty that is noted within the specification. So in submitting the best price, receiving the best evaluation out of the 11 contractors, we feel that the recommendation should not be considered by the council and reconsidered to be extended to J.J. Redd Commercial Roofing because we are truly the best value, given that our manufacturer and the manufacturer that's listed in the specifications, per their own documentation, is one and the same. It is the same material, it is the same warranty. So if we scored the best price and we scored the best evaluation, we feel we should not be disqualified from this project and that the council should consider us as the contractor to be awarded. Now, in regards to the question that was asked, the warranty could not be voided if the installation of the the solar system, is placed on the roof deck itself. There's no void of warranty at that point. You could possibly void the warranty if the solar system support structure penetrates the new roof. If that roof is repaired or flashed to provide positive water flow by a contractor who is not certified for that manufacturer, then that will void the warranty. However, any contractor that is certified by Firestone, in my case by Genflex, could come back in and make repairs to that skylight system. So it's a question of how the the solar system will be attached to the building would need to be addressed. Any questions concerning my true reason for being here this evening?
Thank you. No, you can say. I'm just going to go around and see if anyone has any questions for you. Councilmember Tana, do you have any questions? Yes, sir. Councilmember Norwood. Councilmember Lynn.
So I'll go back to Kevin. We're confident that who we have lined up for the installation of the solar will work well with the roof, and we're not going to have any issues?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Baumgartner. Councilmember Blackson.
Yeah, I got a question. Okay. I just sat back here with my trusty little iPad, thanks to Steve Jobs. And I typed in Genflex in Google. Well, I checked it in DuckDuckGo, and it popped up, and it said, company, founded in 1915, parent organization, Firestone Building Products Company, LLC. So sounds like I forget his name, I'm sorry.
Robert.
What he's saying is actually is kind of true. So I don't know from a council aspect, what's the correct way? Well, I know from being in the construction industry, that would fly, but this obviously is municipal government, a little bit different. So what do we do?
Actually, like I said, I wasn't anticipating this because we had sent out the evaluations prior and we didn't hear any comments back or anything. So I didn't have my roof consultant here, but I did talk to him. And the reason Firestone, Carlisle, and John Mansfield was selected as the approved TPO roofs is because they're the most proven 20 to 30-year-old roof with reliable warranty repairs. They're three of the most commonly installed membranes for commercial roofs, like 90% of the roofs according to them. They've been in the business for 25 years. Zach, who was here earlier, Zach Warnick, has been doing this for 13 years. He said that Genflex, the one that was submitted, the reason they were disqualified is because it's a Tier 2 TPO, and most manufacturers have a Tier 2. Okay? I'm sorry. He said that Genflex is a Tier 2 TPO. Firestone may own them. The other part is if it's the same membrane, I don't know why we didn't get a quote on the Firestone brand itself. But he said even when marketing these Tier 2s, they're not marketed as the same. So he said all these manufacturers have a Tier 2, so it's not equivalent. When we did the specs, we were looking at the long-term viability of the roof, the TPO, because that's an important part of the building. We want to have a good investment. If we were to, as far as the process, if we were to entertain alternative TPOs, we would have to go out to bid again rebid it because it didn't meet the spec. Aside from that, nor did we get any questions during the walkthrough. Would this meet, would be, there was no submittal saying, will this be acceptable? It was just the explanation. So, I mean, you can put any TPO on there, but that didn't meet the spec that we established, and that's why we had the spec.
Mr. Edwards, just a few questions. I mean, regarding the classification of the tiers, what's your opinion of Firestone, Carlisle, and Johnson versus Genflex in terms of actual tier qualification? And if there are different tiers, what is the difference between them? And then does Genflex have its own warranty, or because it's owned by Firestone, does it come with a Firestone warranty as well?
Well, I can't answer the level of tiers from the other manufacturers, but I do have documentation from Firestone and Genflex that reads, not only are the roofing membranes offered by Firestone Building Products and Genflex Roofing Systems one and the same, but they are backed by the same resources. So meaning they would have, the materials are the same, it's made on the same production line, and the warranty will be extended from Firestone and not from Genflex. So I can't speak for the other manufacturers because I'm not certified with them, but this documentation from Genflex speaks to the fact that Firestone Building Products and Genflex are one and the same membrane.
And in your opinion, is there a pricing difference between Genflex and Firestone?
Overall, there's not much price in the membrane itself. Pricing increases would come from the from the contractors that are installing them. But when you compare membranes, apple to apple, 60 mil, 80 mil, they're relatively the same.
So I guess if it's the same in terms of the membrane, why is in your opinion, the contract valuation different in terms of who's installing, the different membranes? Why does that change?
Well, there's a complicated or not fully disclosed process in certifying one contractor for a manufacturer versus another manufacturer. Being a 9-year contractor, I'm not privy to that information. But overall, when the roof is installed and the roof manufacturer comes out to inspect it in order to issue their 20-year warranty, they're not comparing it to one membrane over the other. They're comparing, was the roof installed in a manner for the manufacturer to issue his 20-year warranty. And as long as that is done, Firestone will extend the warranty. And we have installed multiple roofs for TPO, for Genflex, and each of them have passed, and we have been able to obtain our 20-year requested warranty.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Councilmember Lynn.
So I'm just curious, as referenced here, J.J. Redd did have the highest score, and based on this evidence that we've heard this evening, I'd like to know, where do we go from here? And is there a fault in our process? And how do we, if so, how do we correct it?
Well, I'm not an expert on roofs, but as far as the Tier 2 and the warranty, I mean, we heard that Genflex makes these statements, but do we have documentation from Firestone saying they do warranty this brand? That's one of my concerns. I'm not saying what he's saying is or isn't true. I'm going by what we had spec'd, through the process, through the bid process, and I kind of gave all the reasons. And if future-wise, like I said, if we were going to look at any TPOs, we'd have to look at our evaluation process, and in this case, we would have to go out to bid to be fair of everybody else. Because that's one thing the consultant said when you're dealing with a Tier 2 or when you have the company, the main company that owns it, and they have another subsidiary, the Tier 2, that this presents a pricing disadvantage to the other bidders. So it's an unfair bid if we don't rebid it, to open it up.
Yeah.
So if Mr. Edwards can supply you proper documentation, and still, based on his submission, is the lowest bidder, are we prepared to award the bid to them?
Well, I mean.
And to the gentleman's question, I mean,
I'm not asking you. I'm asking.
Well, I was.
Go ahead. I'm
Yeah,
just here in case I need it.
Okay, yeah, well, you might be. So, you know, what I'm hearing from what Mr. Menchai was telling us is that we went out to bid with a certain spec that required these 3 roofs to be priced and included in the bid. And what came back was a 4th roof. And while there was no RFI or anything requesting, hey, is this okay? Had it been said, yes, this is okay, I think at that moment, we then would have had to go back to all the bidders and say, you can now use this type of roof as well in order to make the bid truly apples to apples, because I guess based on whatever requirements, I don't know if they, didn't dig into that deep of level, but it seemed that, based on these 3, these are the acceptable roofs to price, and bringing in a 4th, kind of, all the other groups, I guess, didn't have an opportunity to price that roof as well to make sure that the bids were apples to apples. And I think that's the issue that we have right here is how were we going to, because the bids came in, I mean, per the spec and the way they go out, are we obligated to send requests back, or is it, this is the spec, what comes in, if it doesn't meet it, we have to cancel it out because of that? Or do we have clarifications that we send back and ask on some of these items? Braden?
I wasn't involved in this particular bidding spec, so I want to look at it. What I would recommend at this point is can't accept his bid now. But we can stop this and we can look into it in a few days and come back if you want us to reconsider whether he should be qualified or not. I mean, if it's different materials, then you have to go through the rebidding process, as you very well said.
Correct.
As he said. But you can always stop this process and then figure out what we do next. You can't accept the disqualified bid at this point. So your options are to accept the recommended bid, or we can come back to another date, iron everything out, make sure we get everything perfectly hammered out, double check, and then come back.
Yeah.
So those would be your options.
I mean, I think the issue for me is that if you scored the highest, that's a telling feature of, quality contractor, but it didn't meet the actual specs of the program. And I'm going to leave it up to council in terms of what you want to do, but, I don't know if it's, do we stop, go back, make sure everyone is apples to apples, and review it one more time, because I don't know the urgency of getting this roof repair. Is it, how long, is this a 30-day process, or is this a
30-day process. And the urgency is, if you remember, it's normally probably wouldn't be, but it's tied to the solar system. We're trying to get the roof on before the solar, and we have a deadline on the solar for, I think it's end of November.
Okay.
To have it installed on that roof.
Just one last comment. There was no RFI in regards to the acceptability of Genflex, because having documentation from Firestone that they're one and the same, and if Firestone Building Products is listed within the spec, I assume, if they are the same from the manufacturer, then they should be accepted. And that's documented through Firestone.
Braden, what would
I
be?
understand is that I heard tier 1 and then the second tier. It sounds to me like it is a different product. We are able to pick when we send out a bid what product we want. If it doesn't meet that product, then we're able to disqualify a product that doesn't meet exactly what we want. I have no idea if they're the same or not. But I understand there to be a difference, thus the disqualification would be valid.
Yep.
Although disputable if somebody is more of a professional about it, but we can stand by the disqualification as long as it's not the exact same product. The disqualification would be valid based on the specs, as I understand it, and then we would be fine to move on with the recommended bid.
Okay. Hold on. I'm going to go in order one more time because it seems a few people want to speak now. So
Sure, thank you. So just to get the timeline correct, we have to install the solar by the end of November. It's a 30-minute process to go back to bid. Is that correct? Is that not what I heard? I'm sorry.
Actually, we got an extension Ben just told me about. We got till December 11th. But, if this bid is awarded tonight, it's going to be 30 days from now until it's installed. If we delay and we have to come back to the next council, we're talking 2 more weeks. And then we still need to have the time for that solar company to install the roof, install the solar once the roof is installed.
And so timeline, the recommendation is we wouldn't be able to have ample time to be
Correct.
able to do that.
Correct.
Otherwise, we probably could kind of delay and go through that process. So you're not opposed to the process, I think it's just a matter of the timeline.
Yes, under normal circumstances. But
Got it.
When we mentioned the 30 days, the 30 days is just to rebid it. Then
Oh.
it has to actually be installed as well, so
Well,
30 days
sure.
plus installation puts you past the solar day.
yeah, actually, if the 30 days was installation, if we had to go out for bid, we're looking at 4 to 6 weeks more.
Got it, thank you.
Councilor Norwood, anything?
Here's what I think I heard, is that we had a vendor who was the highest qualified and met all our requirements except for this spec. And the documentation he's provided says that the item he's providing is the exact same item that we required. So I think we should go back and determine if that's true. And if it's true, then we should relook our bids and be able to award, because he did meet he did provide the item that we had asked for. And then that won't delay our timeline. But I really hate the fact that we're kind of relying on more the letter of the law than what we asked for. You know, if we asked for something and we got it, it's really the ability of the vendor to put this roof on and to get it warranted for the 20 years that we asked. And I think that, you know, this can be ironed out quickly. And we could call, you know, with the governor's relaxation on meetings, we could call a special meeting, do a Zoom session, and address this one item in a very short fashion. So that's just my opinion.
You're right that if we can go back and review whether the disqualification was accurate or not based on the RFP and make sure that we're 100% correct with the disqualification, meaning staff would investigate those two products, determine if there is a difference, which you wouldn't have to rebid, you would just be determining if the product met the original bid.
Right.
So that's a 2-week delay or a special call meeting. But you wouldn't have to rebid, you'd just be verifying the new information we have tonight as to whether or not the product that they bid is the exact same as the product we requested.
Yes, that's it.
So
That's what I'm suggesting.
that would be your other option. You can approve a non-disqualified bidder that meets the other specifications, or investigate whether the disqualifications are accurate and come back at the next meeting. And that doesn't require the 30.
Ben, real quick, what's the value of Encore's incentive for this roof?
I'll need to call Shane real quick and get that for you. I don't want to give you misinformation.
Do we have the
Hold on,
ability?
Mike. I'm going around. Sorry.
I just have a question for the attorney.
Okay.
Do we have the ability to, I mean, we've set the parameters here, we know what we're at, to approve tonight, so we don't have to come back and revisit this, to authorize the city manager to collect the information, make a decision, and move forward? Not to exceed.
But not specify the contractor?
I mean, we authorize them to make contracts with,
Either party A or party B?
yeah.
I don't think so, but I need to check as well while
Okay.
Ben is checking.
Okay.
Unless Charles may know the answer to that, but I don't think he can do that. But I can call him. Let me call him.
So, Kevin, in terms of the bids, tonight would be the award of the bids. So the bidders at this point, I think you mentioned earlier that a certain number of bidders were disqualified, or
Two were disqualified for not meeting spec.
do what?
2 were disqualified for not meeting the specification.
Okay, so this was a
the
particular
manufacturer.
vendor that was disqualified.
Yes.
Okay. And who did not respond to you when you sent out the evaluations,
No responses.
which would have given us a chance to actually look into this?
Yes.
And not have to go through this?
And I was sent out last week.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I did not receive the bid tabulation until around 3 o'clock today, so there was no prior communication that we were disqualified other than the bid tabulation I received from the consultant around 3 o'clock early this afternoon.
Councilman Lynn.
Thank you, Mayor. I think for the sake of openness, transparency, and fairness to everybody, that we need to take a pause here. I would like this matter reviewed by the city manager and a determination be made if the product that Mr. Edwards submitted meets the same standard. And I don't expect purchasing agents to be an expert in 100% of the things that they're involved with. But if it meets the same standard and affords the same warranty and whatnot, and he was a low bidder, then we should adjust our decision accordingly. I think the prudent thing to do tonight would be to put this on hold until the city manager and city attorney can confer and come up with the right plan.
And I did hear back from Pete that we have to award a specific contractor. So Mike's option, although a good one, wouldn't work in these circumstances. So you still have the same two options we discussed, Mr. Norwood, either select an approved contractor or mandate staff reevaluate the disqualifications and then come back in 2 weeks. Or whatever we need.
All right. Hold on. Councilmember Blackson, you have anything before I make another statement?
Okay. I'm sitting here thinking about how I understand kind of, all this, but I guess being in a commercial construction world, if we were to bid something with not the approved product, we have to submit it with what's specified, or we give an we can give an alternate, but we notate that. I guess that I don't know. I find myself between a rock and a hard spot because I feel like we have clear and concise guidelines, and they weren't met, and now we're getting ready to throw everything out and make a big change. I guess that's not the process that we normally follow, but we need to. The only way I think that we can consider his bid is if Firestone writes a letter and it tells us, hey, it comes from Firestone. It says it's to the city of Farmers Branch, and it says, hey, what he's telling you is exactly right, and these two products are the exact same. I think that would be the only way that we could accept his bid as an alternate. And I think moving forward, I think for his company, I think that, if you're going to bid on future roofing projects, to bid what is specified and then give us an alternate, because it's our we can accept alternates as we've done in the past. And so I would think that would be the best solution moving forward. But I don't want us to further delay, and then all of a sudden we get weather and we get all these other things, and now the roof's not getting done until next year, kind of thing. So that's between I would be okay approving who's in the, I guess, All-American's the one we were going to approve, right? If it was just by the books.
It's Progressive.
Or whatever it is, okay? But,
that right.
I think that if council wants to give him time to procure a letter from Firestone, detailing the differences in the two, I don't know. I mean, that sounds like I might be outvoted, but I think we need to we have our purchasing guy in place, and he does all these things. I think we're just convoluting it and kind of, muddying it up. So,
Ben, do you have the answer?
The Encore incentives are $267,265.
So it's more than the value of the roof.
What is that? What are the restrictions on that? That we have to begin installation, or does it have to be fully installed by a certain date and operational?
That was the project conclusion date, the installation by December 11th, which is an extension as well because of the environment we're in.
And I mean, in my opinion, this is just one man's opinion. I know that Carlisle and Firestone are regarded as kind of the gold standard in terms of TPO roof membranes, in terms of the warranty that you get. And Mr. Edwards, I think the way you described it, there are some different processes when you're installing the Genflex versus Firestone or Carlisle. And if we were to go back and look at it, and yes, if Genflex is approved and it's something we're willing to look at that same time, I feel you have to allow everyone else to price that same product. That's the only way that's fair in my mind. Just because tier 2 to tier 1, or whichever way the metric moves, that would be the only way, in my opinion, if we had opened it back up and we were going to allow that product based on the way that these were the specs. If we're now allowing this, everyone should have the opportunity to price that same product, and that's where I sit on it. So I'm gonna let council decide what they want to do. I think I have, there's a lot of facts here. There's a lot of things to definitely consider. The highest score does weigh on me some bit. So that's where just kind of go around and figure out how you guys want to proceed given all the facts that we have and some of the timelines we're up against. So, Councilmember Rotana.
Sure, and I guess I was under the same impression that based on what you just mentioned earlier, that because of the different tiers, it would only be fair to open it up for rebid because of the fact that you may get other bids that may be even lower, but we won't know that until we open it up. That's my understanding, which is why I asked about the timeline, because I think that if we do open it up, that timeline may not be sufficient enough for us to meet our deadline, which would then we would lose out on those funds. And so although I do think we definitely need to revisit this moving forward and see what options we have policy-wise to make the change, I think that in this particular case, it may be a little late to be able to do that, because in order to be fair to all of our bidders, I think we would need to go out to bid because of that tier 1 and tier 2 process. Although he did score high, and I do agree that he may be a good fit, I just feel like everyone else didn't have that option, and so we may have gotten a different bidder, maybe even a lower bidder, maybe even someone new that may have scored even higher. We just wouldn't know that. And so, I'm in accordance with what you may said, Mayor, as well. I just don't think that for this particular case, the timeline may not match, and I would like it to be fair across the board for anyone else that's trying to bid for to work with our city. But again, that's just my one woman's opinion.
One thing, that creative solution that Pete suggested would be perhaps to award the bid to who is currently determined to be the lowest reasonable bidder, which is the approved contractor approved bid that is currently being recommended by the city, subject to a city manager or authorized designee's review of the disqualification process. And then if there is an erroneous disqualification, you can award the bid to whoever is deemed by the city manager to be the lowest reasonable bidder. Essentially, you can say, it's complicated, but you can say, we're going to approve the contractor that is recommended by the city right now, but give it a chance for the city manager to review the erroneous disqualifications or not, and then automatically award the bid to any of the two disqualified bids if it's determined by the city manager that after their disqualification, they're not disqualified anymore, they're the lowest responsible bidder. Sounds complicated, but it's really not. I'm just not expressing myself very well. But that is another option that you have. So that allows us to take action tonight that would cover us in most circumstances and make sure that we do a thorough review of the disqualification so that we're not unfairly treating someone who scored really high on the rest of their reasonableness and responsibility tests.
I would be open to that just because, as I said, I look at the total amount here, that's $237,200, and the incentive is almost $270,000. And if we're up against timelines, if this keeps moving things forward, I wouldn't want to lose that amount of potential savings, to a project, and especially if that accomplishes, both goals in terms of if we do find that, there's an opportunity to award that based on any, erroneous disqualification that could, it puts it in the hands of a thorough review and expedites the timeline in terms of not having to recall a special meeting and go back through it. But I'm going to go back on Bronson. I'm going to go Bronson then.
I agree with that approach. I think it streamlines everything, and it allows us to undisqualify a previously disqualified bidder if the product was the same that we had spec'd in. I like that approach.
Councilman Blackson.
Okay, I don't have any problem with anything that we do tonight as long as it doesn't jeopardize the solar being put on the building. So if we're going to convolute this more and make this more of a mess and it jeopardizes solar, then I think we've completely lost sight of what we're up here to do. So that's why I just want to make sure that, I'm all for making sure everyone is equitable and fair, and if he's willing to get a letter from Firestone, I have no problem with that. But if we're going to let us lose sight of our solar incentive, I think we're missing the boat completely. Because the solar incentive is going to help us for 30 years, and it's going to far outlast the roof.
To be clear, though, we're not going to there's no more time to submit anything. The city manager or designee is going to review the materials just to double check the confirmation of materials. Because that's why they have that 10-day built in, where they're supposed to, if they disagree with the disqualification, we have 10 days to look into it. All we're saying is because of that didn't happen, we can give ourselves a day, not a wait to get a letter from Firestone, but a day for the city manager to review everything and make sure that the disqualification is valid.
Okay. Councilman Orlando.
Braden, so I agree with what you said, except I wouldn't notify the current low bidder, and I don't expect us to rebid this because now that this document is a public document, everybody has seen what everybody else has bid. So that sort of defeats the purpose of a sealed bid. But allowing Charles to review and make a determination, putting this in the city manager's hand, make a determination as if the material is the same, warranted the same, whatnot, just as Councilman Norwood said, then I would support that way to move forward. And if it is, then he can award the bid to the low bidder, J.J. Redd.
Right, and it'll take us longer to document the outcome of this proceeding than it would to do the city manager's review of the disqualification, so you wouldn't be telling somebody else if they got the bid and then pulling it away from the very next day.
Did I hear you correctly that there's supposed to be 10 days allotted for someone to respond to a disqualification?
No, but they send the notification out in enough time for you to respond. There's no legal requirement for any of that. But they do in the bids send out notices.
There's been no notification of any kind, no communication of any kind since the bids were submitted. And up until earlier today, there's been no communication.
Right, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, I've heard that twice now. The bids were open publicly, and the bidders are at the bid. They're invited to the bid. So you had an opportunity to be at the bid and get copies of that bid tabulation. Is that not correct?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did receive a bid tabulation, but there was an evaluation process. So at the bid opening, no one knows how they have scored. And since the bid opening, there's been absolutely no communication. So we don't know how.
You had the initial tabulation.
Yes, and I was the apparent low bidder. Yes.
Councilmember Malvern.
I'm good with the strategy that we've talked there, letting Charles confirm if the disqualification was correct or not, and moving forward.
Councilmember Blackson. Final.
Mayor, I do have a question. I mean, I'm comfortable doing that, but I will tell you I really will need to have some proof that those products are equivalent. And if we can have that, sooner rather than later, that would be most helpful.
To that concern of time and to expedite the process, I can provide you with the product data sheets from Firestone as well as the product data sheets from Genflex showing that they're the exact same product and they have the same STM certifications.
Okay. All right, Councilmember Rotano, do you have anything more.
I was going to say, it may be a good idea to put a time certain on when you should get those items, because I'm just worried about the timeline for this. So, and I don't know if that's something that we could add a time certain that our city manager needs to receive the documentations by, I don't know, Friday or what have you, whatever the city manager feels more comfortable with, just to make sure that we are abiding by the timeline and we move forward with this process to ensure that it gets installed on time.
Sure, you can put a hard deadline on that.
Charles, what would you suggest would be the?
It doesn't have to be in the formalized stuff. The city managers can say, I'm going to complete this review by tomorrow at 5. So then he has to only use information available to him by tomorrow at 5.
Well,
Is
so if I
24
understand
hours
the gentleman
enough?
correctly, you have those sheets already, right?
I just have to go download them, and I will email them to you tomorrow morning.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
And I would say that likely they'll have everything they need to make a decision by tomorrow at 5, which would be the goal.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, then.
Let me get some language. Yeah. Which I can do very quickly. Who wants to make this motion?
I'm willing to give it a shot. I think
Terry's going to take
Oh,
it.
you want to do
Just a
it? Okay,
second.
fine.
Correct.
Charles, I think Pete sent you the email with the motion.
I don't have it. Give him 5 minutes.
John's gone. We're going to go ahead and recess. It's 9:02. Welcome back. The time is 9:08. I appreciate you all staying with us for this brief recess. Councilmember Lynn, you have a motion to make.
Yes, I do, Mayor. I move to approve Resolution 2020-145 as amended to authorize the city manager to award a contract to the lowest responsible bidder after review of any disqualified bids.
I have a motion by Councilmember Lynn.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Norwood. Any more discussion? I know, brother. Councilmember Ratana, how do you vote?
No.
Councilmember Norwood, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilmember Lynn, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilmember Baumgartner, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilmember Blackson, how do you vote?
No.
Motion carries 3-2. Thank you. Next is K5. Consider approving resolution number 2020-146, authorizing the city manager to negotiate and enter a contractual agreement with modern contractors related to Phase 1 of the Recreation Center renovation project, provide an effective date, and take appropriate action. Welcome back, Mr. Henshaw.
Welcome back. This item and the next agenda item are both for Phase 1 of the Recreation Center renovation project. We're seeking approval to award this bid for the renovation of the West Gym, reception desk, central corridors, and the children's area as designed by Quorum Architects. One thing I was going to show everybody, since it's been a while for the people viewing at home, just to kind of go through the conceptual drawings just real quick. Whoop, 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 what happened? There we go. So that's the entrance as you walk in. This is a conceptual drawing that Quorum did back when we were given authorization to move forward. This is another view of that.
Kevin, can you talk more into the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. This is in behind the reception desk, looking at the front doors, the main entrance doors. This is the west gym. The layout with the grass is a little different. I'm going to show you a diagram, but this is how it will look. This actually is the layout, the latest one, to where you can see the turf is more along the western side, and you can see all the different types of equipment laid out there. Children's area, children's zone. It's going to be a fun place for the kids to come. They're going to want to be there every day while their parents are working out. And as part of this, this is Phase 1. Our hopes that there's going to be a Phase 2, which is the second floor, and then Phase 3 would be the front exterior, which is just a view of that. We didn't have anything for the second floor because it's basically a basic renovation, just changing the finishes. So, another view of the front. It would be it's a dramatic change for the rec center. There was, on this bid, there was a total of 12 sealed bids ranging from $1,125,000 to $2,446,874. The two lowest bidders requested to rescind their bids due to not having all the elements of the scope of work. One bid was disqualified for not signing the bid submittal document, which is required. Now it leaves the lowest bid at $1,526,000. The remaining bids were evaluated based on best value scoring by the following areas with a maximum of 100 points. Base bid cost, construction timeline and schedule, references related to experience, personnel assigned, their qualifications. The best value bid evaluations were emailed to the bidders all last week. Never received any responses. Modern Contractors Incorporated received the highest with 94 points and was the third lowest bidder of $1,586,000. Staff recommends awarding city bid 2020-15 to Modern Contractors. David Duman from Quorum Architects is here, so if you have any questions for him or I, we're here.
I have one question, and it's completely random, and maybe it's just because it's just the rendering, and it might not be the way it actually plays out, but in that second photo, we showed the lights hanging down, kind of like the chandelier type look in the foyer.
Yes.
Do we know what level, how high those lights are going to be? Because a kid like me would love to run through and just smack all of them. And I'm just concerned that, is it 11 feet to make sure that, less than 1% of the population can get there? Or
Good evening, almost.
just name and address, please.
Council, David Newman, Quorum Architects, 825 West Hickory, Fort Worth, Texas, 76104. Mayor, to answer your question, I don't have the detailed drawings with me. I do remember whenever we modeled that in Revit in our 3D modeling program, it seemed like it varies from maybe 12 to 15 feet, and it has a free flowing. Knowing that you have a concern about it, I'll go back tomorrow morning and just be sure it's high enough that somebody can't jump up there and hit it.
Yeah, I have an incredible vertical, and I was concerned about other people as well. So, yeah.
Well, we know some of the people coming in the gym do have a good vertical.
So, no, I saw that. Just
I don't know, Mayor. I don't know if they have the same vertical as high school. I don't know about that.
Not anymore. Yeah. Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Kevin or for Quorum? No? Okay. Look for a motion. All right. I move to approve Resolution 2020-147, authorizing the city manager to award city bid 2020-19 to Modern Contractors, Inc. for Phase 1 of the Recreation Center renovation project.
Yeah, it's 146.
It says 147 in the...
Case
I've
file.
moved on, is what happened. So
Yeah.
146, my apologies.
I second 146.
Okay. Second by Councilmember Norwood. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Case 6, consider approving resolution number 2020-147, authorizing the city manager to award city bid 20-19 to Modern Contractors, Inc., related to the construction of Phase 1 of the Rec Center renovation project and take appropriate action. Go. Sir, you have to come to the microphone.
My name is Robert Barsani, and I live at 13745 Neutron Road. I was just wondering if you had considered any public art projects for this facility.
We consider them all the time. We have a public art and culture committee that also kind of works to oversee some of those things. So it's definitely something we consider. But I guess in terms of how we're considering it in this project,
Well,
I don't know where it's at, and we'd have to probably coordinate with multiple groups, such as staff regarding the rec center, and then bring in the commission and some other things. But that would be a conversation. If you would like to have that after the meeting, we can talk about what steps or inquiries might look like.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Minchow.
As I mentioned before, this is the second bid related to Phase 1 of the Recreation Center renovation project, which encompasses the remainder of the first floor with the exception of the east wood floor gym and the gymnasium room. All the finishes were provided by Quorum to ensure overall consistency of the project. There were a total of 4 sealed bids ranging from $526,300 to $976,558. One bidder was disqualified for not having the required bid bond in the sealed bid. Another bidder was disqualified for not signing the bid document submittal, which is required, leaving 2 bidders. City staff evaluated the bids for the best value with a maximum of 100 points for the following criteria: base bid price, attendance of the mandatory bid walkthrough, references, Modern Contractors, coincidentally, received the highest score of 99 in this bid, and was the lowest bid of $526,300. Staff recommends awarding city bid 2020-19 to Modern Contractors. And I'm here if there's any questions.
Any questions at this time? Okay, does anyone want to make a motion, or should I make my motion from last time? No, go ahead.
Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 2020-147.
I have a motion by Councilmember Ratana, second by me. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Next is L, take any action necessary as a result of the closed executive session. Councilmember Norwood.
I move that the city manager be authorized to take such action on behalf of the city as may be reasonable and necessary to purchase or authorize the purchase of Lot 9, Block C, Farmers Dell Addition, also known as 12918 Harrisburg Circle, for a purchase price not to exceed $182,575, plus all closing and acquisition costs, and to sign or authorize the city's agent to sign such other agreements, documents, and any amendments thereto as the city manager in consultation with the city attorney deems reasonable and necessary with respect to the closing of said transaction.
I'll second that. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passed unanimously. Seeing no more business, I will adjourn tonight's meeting at 9:20 p.m. Everyone have a good night.